My husband's sister called me rude for walking out of dinner. I never imagined a simple family dinner could turn into such an uncomfortable mess, but somehow it did. My husband, Mark, has a younger sister named Danielle. She's 28, very opinionated, and always thinks she's the funniest person in the room. I've tolerated her for years, even when her humor crosses lines. But this time, she really got to me. It all started when Danielle invited us out to dinner with her new boyfriend, Eric. She was excited for us to meet him, saying he was the one and that we'd love him. Mark was happy for her. He's always been protective of his sister, and he wanted to make a good impression too. I agreed to go because I genuinely wanted to be supportive. We met at a trendy Italian place downtown. Danielle and Eric were already there when we arrived. Eric stood up, shook Mark's hand, and smiled at me politely at first. Things seemed normal. Small talk, catching up, talking about work. The usual, but as the evening went on, the conversation started to shift into uncomfortable territory. Danielle started teasing Mark about how whipped he was. She joked that I trained him well, and Eric laughed, saying something like, "Yeah, every married guy ends up that way eventually." I laughed awkwardly, trying to keep things light, but Mark didn't really respond. He just smiled tightly and changed the subject. Then came the wine. Danielle had a few glasses, and her humor got sharper. She began making jokes about our marriage, implying that I wear the pants. It wasn't the first time she's said that, but this time she was louder, and people at nearby tables could probably hear. I tried to diffuse the tension by saying, "We're just a good team." Eric chuckled and added, "Oh, so you're the boss then?" Mark was quiet, staring at his plate. I could tell he was uncomfortable, but trying not to make a scene. Danielle kept laughing, saying things like, "Come on, it's true. Mark does everything she says. Remember when you skipped the fishing trip because she didn't want you to go?" Mark looked up and said calmly, "I didn't skip it because she said so. I skipped it because I was sick." Danielle rolled her eyes. "Right? Sure. You're just scared of upsetting your wife." That's when I felt my patience start to crumble. I took a sip of my drink and said, "Danielle, I think you've had enough fun with this joke instead of backing off." She smirked. "Oh, come on. It's just a joke. Don't be so sensitive." "You two need to loosen up," Eric chimed in. "Yeah, it's all in good fun." "No need to get defensive," Mark finally said. "You're being rude, Danielle," she scoffed. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking." I could feel my face getting hot, partly from embarrassment and partly from anger. I didn't want to cause a scene, but I also didn't want to sit there being mocked for another hour. So I stood up, grabbed my purse, and said, "You know what? I'm done with dinner. Enjoy your evening." Mark immediately stood up too, looking torn between me and his sister. He said quietly, "Let's just go." Danielle looked shocked. "Seriously? You're leaving? Because of a joke?" Eric muttered, "Wow, dramatic much." I didn't even respond. I just walked out. Mark followed a few seconds later, and we got into the car. The drive home was quiet at first. Then Mark sighed and said, "I'm sorry. I should have said something earlier." Told him it wasn't his fault. I just couldn't sit there being disrespected in public. I said, "She's been crossing lines for years. I've let it go too many times." He nodded and said, "You're right, I'll talk to her." But the next day, Danielle called him furious. She said I embarrassed her in front of her boyfriend, that I was too sensitive, and that she didn't mean anything by it when Mark defended me. She told him I manipulated him into leaving and that I was trying to control their relationship. Now she's refusing to talk to me, and she told their mom that I stormed out and ruined dinner over a harmless joke. Mark's mom called me to smooth things over, saying Danielle was just teasing and I should apologize to keep the peace. I told her I wasn't apologizing for standing up for myself. I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I simply removed myself from a situation where I was being disrespected. Still, part of me wonders if I overreacted. I could have just ignored her like I always do. But the other part of me feels like enough is enough. I've put up with her digs for years. If I don't draw a line now, she'll keep doing it. Mark says he supports me, but I can tell he's caught in the middle. He's close with Danielle, and she's making him feel guilty for taking my side. He told me, "I just wish you two could get along," I said. I've been trying for 6 years. Getting along shouldn't mean letting her insult me. He didn't argue with that. But I could see how drained he was a few days later. Eric texted Mark to clear the air, saying he thought it was funny and that I took it too seriously. Mark didn't reply. Then Danielle posted a photo on Instagram with the caption, "Can't even make jokes anymore without people walking out. Guess some people can't take a little truth." I didn't comment, I just blocked her now. Every time family dinner gets mentioned, Mark hesitates. He's worried his mom will pressure us to make up with Danielle before Thanksgiving. Honestly, I don't even want to go if she's there. I'm tired of being her punchline. I don't think standing up and leaving was rude. I didn't yell or insult her. I just removed myself from an uncomfortable situation. But now I'm painted as dramatic and controlling, so here I am, wondering if walking out really was the wrong thing to do. Or if people like Danielle only stop when you finally walk away. Update: it's been about 3 weeks since that dinner, and things have gotten complicated. I honestly thought time would cool things off. But instead, it's like Danielle decided to turn this into a full-blown campaign against me. After I blocked her on Instagram, she must have realized it, because she texted Mark a long message saying she can't believe I'm trying to erase family. She accused me of being immature and manipulative, saying I'm isolating Mark from his family. Then she added a dig about how good luck keeping a marriage if you can't handle a little teasing. Mark didn't show me the message at first. I only found out when he started acting quiet one night. I asked him what was wrong, and he admitted Danielle had texted him. He said he didn't want to upset me. That made me angrier than her message. Honestly, I told him, you don't need to protect me from her words. I already know how she talks about me. He sighed and said, I just don't want to keep fighting with her. I'm tired and I get that, but I told him, the only reason this keeps happening is because you never make her face consequences. She says what she wants, and you let her. Then I'm the bad guy for reacting. He didn't argue. He just nodded and went quiet. A few days later, Mark's mom invited us over for Sunday dinner. I hesitated, but Mark asked me to go, he said. She just wants to talk things out. Danielle won't be there. Against my better judgment, I agreed when we got there. His mom, Carol, was being extra sweet, cooking Mark's favorite dishes and making small talk. Everything seemed normal until halfway through the meal. When I noticed Danielle's car pull up outside, I froze. I looked at Mark, and he immediately realized what was happening. Mom, he said, you said she wouldn't come? Carol looked guilty and said, I just thought maybe if you two were face to face, you could talk it out. I'm tired of the tension. Before I could say anything, Danielle came in, smiling like nothing was wrong. Wow. Look who actually showed up, she said, dropping her purse on the chair. Mark stood up immediately. This isn't fair. Mom, but Carol insisted. Your family. You can't keep avoiding each other. Danielle sat down and said, relax. I'm not here to fight. I just think it's ridiculous that my brother's wife can't take a joke without storming out like a diva. I calmly said, Danielle, this isn't about a joke. It's about you not respecting boundaries. She rolled her eyes. Boundaries? Please, it's family, not therapy. You're just too uptight. Mark finally lost it a bit. He said, Danielle, stop. You embarrassed my wife. You made her uncomfortable in public, and you've been trashing her since. Enough. She looked genuinely shocked, like she couldn't believe he'd raise his voice at her. Wow, she said. So that's how it is now? You're choosing her over your own sister. He didn't even hesitate. I'm choosing my marriage. That shut her up for a moment. But Carol looked upset. Mark. She didn't mean to, Mark interrupted. She did. And she's been doing this for years. The silence that followed was heavy. I finally said quietly, I think we should go, as we were leaving. Danielle muttered under her breath. Guess you've got him on a leash after all. Mark stopped in his tracks, turned around and said, You know what, Danielle? I'm done. Then he walked out. I followed, heart pounding, when we got home. I could tell he was torn apart. He sat on the couch and just stared at the wall for a long time. I hate that it came to this, he said. I love my sister, but she doesn't know how to stop pushing people away, I told him. Maybe this is what she needs to realize it's not funny anymore. He nodded, but I could see how sad he was. A week later, Carol called again, but this time, she apologized. She said she hadn't realized how bad things had gotten between me and Danielle. She admitted that Danielle had always been the loud one, and that they often excused her behavior as just how she is, she said. Maybe it's time we stopped doing that. That meant a lot to me. I didn't expect her to take my side. But hearing her acknowledge the pattern gave me hope that things might change eventually. Then, just when I thought the drama was over, Danielle posted another cryptic story online, a picture of her wine glass with the caption, "At least my wine doesn't judge me." I didn't respond. Obviously, Mark saw it, rolled his eyes, and said, "She's trying to get a reaction." We both agreed to stay quiet. In the meantime, Mark and I have grown closer. I think standing up for each other through this actually strengthened us. He told me, "I see now why it bothered you so much. I used to laugh it off, but it wasn't fair to you. It's been a long, exhausting few weeks, but for the first time, I feel like I'm not fighting this battle alone." I don't know if Danielle and I will ever have a real relationship, maybe someday. When she's ready to take responsibility for how she treats people, we can talk, but right now, I'm at peace with keeping my distance. Sometimes walking away isn't dramatic, it's just self-respect. And if anyone wants to call that too sensitive, they can go ahead. I've realized I'd rather be sensitive than be someone who hurts others and calls it humor. Final update. It's been a little over 2 months since the dinner incident, and things have changed in ways I didn't expect, some for the better, some not so much. After that last confrontation at Mark's mom's house, we went completely no contact with Danielle. It wasn't an official "we're cutting you off" announcement. We just stopped engaging. No texts, no social media, nothing at first. I thought she'd get over it and move on, but apparently she wasn't ready to let it go. 2 weeks after our last encounter, one of Mark's cousins got married. We were invited, of course, but we weren't sure if Danielle would show up. Mark debated skipping it, but I told him, "You shouldn't miss a family wedding because of her," he agreed. We arrived early and sat at our table, chatting with some of his relatives. Then I saw Danielle walk in, wearing a bright red dress. Loud laugh echoing across the room, Eric trailing behind her. I immediately felt my stomach tighten. She spotted us almost instantly. For a second, our eyes met, and she gave me that smirk, the one that always meant trouble. But instead of approaching, she just walked past us and sat at another table. I thought maybe, just maybe, we could get through the night without drama. But during dinner, I overheard her at the next table loudly telling someone, "Yeah, my brother's wife hates me because she can't take a joke." Guess being boring is her personality now. I tried to ignore it. Mark heard it too. He clenched his jaw but didn't say anything. I just reached for his hand under the table, but the real breaking point came later. When people started dancing, Mark was up getting us drinks, and I was sitting with a few other guests. Danielle came over, drink in hand, and said, "Hey, can we talk?" I looked up at her, surprised but calm. "Sure," I said carefully. She sat down beside me. Clearly buzzed. "Look," she started. "I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, okay? But you've made this such a big deal. Everyone thinks I'm some kind of villain," I said. "Danielle, it's not about one joke. It's about years of you crossing lines and not caring how it affects people." She frowned. Leaning closer, "You just don't get me. I joke like this with everyone. You're just sensitive." That word again. Sensitive? It's her favorite excuse, I said. Maybe. "But you need to understand being honest or funny doesn't give you the right to insult people." She rolled her eyes. "You're not insulted. You're insecure." I stood up then, looked her straight in the eyes and said, "You don't get to define how I feel anymore." Then I walked away. Mark saw me coming and immediately asked, "What did she say?" I told him everything. He didn't even hesitate. He went straight to her table. I watched from across the room as he leaned down and said something to her. She looked startled, then angry. Her boyfriend tried to calm her down, but she stood up and started arguing. A few heads turned. Then Mark just walked away from her and came back to me. "Let's go," he said as we were leaving. I heard Danielle shout behind us, "You're pathetic, Mark. You're not even your own man anymore." Everyone looked. Mark didn't even flinch. He just kept walking. The drive home was quiet. I was shaking a little. "Not from fear, but from adrenaline," I said. I'm sorry this keeps happening. He looked over and said, Don't apologize for her behavior. I'm done making excuses for her. That was the moment I realized something had really shifted in him. For years, he'd been stuck between loyalty and boundaries. But now he finally saw that standing up for one doesn't mean betraying the other. A few days later, Carol called us. She'd heard about the scene at the wedding and wanted to talk. I was bracing for another guilt trip. But instead, she surprised me, she said. I talked to Danielle. She told me everything. I told her I'm done defending her when she hurts people. I love her. But she needs to grow up. I didn't know what to say. I actually teared up a little. Carol went on. You've been patient with her for years. You've always shown up even when she pushed you. You didn't deserve any of this. It was like a weight lifted off my chest hearing that. Apparently, after the wedding, Eric broke up with Danielle. He told Mark's cousin that he couldn't handle the drama anymore. She took it hard, of course, and posted a few cryptic things online, quotes about betrayal and fake people. Since then, she hasn't reached out to either of us. Carol says she's taking time to reflect, but knowing Danielle, that might just mean she's sulking. Still, I genuinely hope she does reflect. Not because I need an apology, though that would be nice, but because I don't want her to stay stuck in this pattern forever. As for Mark and me, we're in a really good place. It's almost strange how peaceful things feel now that the constant tension is gone. We started doing weekly date nights again, and he's been more open about setting boundaries with his family. Last week, we hosted Carol and Mark's dad for dinner. No drama, just laughter and good food. Carol even brought a pie and said, I think this is the first family dinner in years that didn't end in tears. We all laughed. But there was some truth behind it. I don't know what the future holds with Danielle. Maybe one day she'll reach out and we'll talk again. But for now, I'm okay keeping distance. Some relationships need space before they can heal if they ever do. Looking back, walking out of that dinner was the turning point. It wasn't about being dramatic or proving a point. It was about choosing self-respect over silent suffering. I used to think staying quiet kept the peace, but really it just kept me small. And if I've learned anything from all this, it's that peace built on disrespect isn't peace at all. It's submission. So yeah, I walked out that night and I'd do it again. Every single time. Stories number 2. My parents expect me to give up my life to care for my brother. I-27F grew up in a household that revolved around my younger brother, Caleb 24M. Caleb was born with cerebral palsy and requires full-time assistance. My parents, Linda and Roger, have always been deeply devoted to him, which I completely understand. He's their son, and he's an amazing person despite his challenges. Smart, funny and gentle. I love him, but as much as I love him, I can't help but feel like my entire existence has been defined by his care. When I was little, it wasn't so bad. I helped feed him. I read to him. I learned how to lift him properly before I was even in middle school. But as I got older, it became clear that helping wasn't just something I did. It was an expectation. My parents made it sound noble. You're such a good sister, my mom would say whenever she asked me to skip a party to stay home and watch Caleb so they could go to a fundraiser or an appointment. By the time I was in high school, I'd stopped asking for anything. College applications, part-time jobs, even sleepovers all had to be scheduled around Caleb when I got accepted into a college in Chicago. I was thrilled. It was my first real shot at independence. But then my dad sat me down and told me, we need you here. We can't do this without you. I deferred my admission that year. Then another and another. Eventually I just didn't go. Fast forward to now, I have a decent job at a local insurance office. I rent a small apartment about 30 minutes away, and I visit home multiple times a week to help with Caleb. My parents are in their late 50s now, and I can tell they're tired a few weeks ago. My mom called a family meeting that's usually code for bad news. We sat in the living room, Caleb in his motorized chair. My parents on the couch. My mom started crying almost immediately. We've been talking, she said, and we think it's time we start making long-term plans for Caleb. We won't be around forever. My dad looked at me and said, we were thinking you could move back home permanently. Maybe convert the basement into a space for you and Caleb. You could work remotely and take over his care full-time when we're gone. It felt like the air was sucked out of the room, I asked. Why would I do that? My mom blinked like I'd just slapped her. Because you're his sister, she said. Who else would do it? You've always been so good with him, I said. You've had years to plan for this. Why haven't you looked into long-term care or assisted living options? That's when my dad snapped. You want us to dump him somewhere? He said, his voice shaking. You think strangers will love him like you do? You think they'll take care of him like family? I tried to stay calm, but my voice broke. You're asking me to give up my entire life. I want to get married someday, have kids, travel. You're asking me to stop existing outside of him. My mom started crying harder. So you just don't care what happens to your brother? That crushed me, because I do care. I adore Caleb. He's my brother, and he's been my best friend in so many ways. But he deserves professional care, not a resentful sister who gave up everything because she felt cornered. After that conversation, things have been tense. My parents have barely spoken to me. My mom sends guilt-ridden texts like, Caleb asked if you're mad at him, or, we won't be here forever, right? Caleb himself seems to sense something's off. He keeps asking me if I'm okay, and I just tell him I'm tired. Last weekend, I went to visit and found brochures on the kitchen counter, not for care facilities, but for home renovation companies. They're planning to remodel the basement anyway, my dad said. We're getting ahead of it once you move back. It'll all be set up, I told them, flat out. I'm not moving back. You need to find other options, Mom said. You'll change your mind. You always do. That line broke something in me, because she's right. I always do. I always give in. But this time, I left the house without saying goodbye. I drove home shaking, and when I got there, I cried until I couldn't breathe. I keep thinking about how unfair it all feels to me. But also to Caleb. He deserves stability, care, and love that isn't tangled up in guilt or resentment. I deserve a life that's my own. I've started researching facilities myself, trying to see what's out there. I even reached out to a local disability advocate who explained that. There are great programs that can provide Caleb with round-the-clock support and social interaction. Some even have group homes with activities and therapy sessions designed to help him thrive. When I mentioned that to my mom over the phone, she said, "We're not sending him to some institution," I told her. "It's not an institution, it's a professional care environment." She hung up on me. It's been 2 weeks since that call. My dad sent me an email yesterday that just said, "You've abandoned your family. Don't bother coming back." Caleb texted me a few hours later. "Mom's mad. I don't want you to be mad too." I told him I wasn't mad, I just needed some time. But truthfully, I'm heartbroken. Sometimes I wonder if I'm the selfish one for not wanting to take on the responsibility. Then I think about all the years I already gave up, all the birthdays, trips, and chances I lost because someone always needed me at home. I know love shouldn't mean sacrifice without end. Still, when I close my eyes, I hear my dad's voice saying, "Who else will love him like you do?" And that's what keeps me up at night. Update: it's been a few months since I posted, and a lot has happened emotionally, mentally, and practically. I honestly didn't expect that so many people would relate to my situation. Reading the comments and messages from people who have been through something similar gave me more validation than I've ever gotten from my own family. For the first time, I didn't feel like some kind of monster for wanting a life that's mine. After that last blow-up with my parents, I went low contact for about 6 weeks. It was brutal. Caleb and I texted occasionally, but I didn't visit. I needed that distance. My therapist, yes. I finally started therapy, told me that I'd been parentified from a young age, and that what my parents were asking wasn't love. It was an expectation born out of codependence and fear. That hit me hard. My entire identity was built around being the good sister, the one who could handle anything in that time apart. I focused on rebuilding small parts of myself. I started hiking on weekends, something I hadn't done since college. I signed up for a pottery class, went out to dinner with coworkers, and even started dating someone, a guy named Evan, who's kind, patient, and actually listens when I talk. He knows about my situation and has been incredibly supportive without pushing me to fix it right away. Meanwhile, I kept quietly researching care options for Caleb. I learned more about state programs, disability housing grants, and organizations that offer financial aid for assisted living arrangements. I even met with a social worker named Meredith, who was amazing. She helped me draft a list of facilities and programs near my parents' town that could give Caleb a dignified, stimulating life, but community. Once I had everything laid out, I decided to try again with my parents. I drove down one Saturday morning, heart pounding the entire way when I got there. My mom barely looked at me. My dad said, "So, you decided we're worth your time again?" I swallowed hard and said, "I came to talk about Caleb's future." They exchanged a glance. My mom sighed. "We already told you what we want." "We're not doing this again," but I opened my laptop and showed them everything anyway. The programs, the funding options, the success stories. I even showed them a video tour of one nearby facility that specialized in residents with cerebral palsy. It was warm, bright, filled with laughter. Staff were engaging with residents, playing music, doing art therapy. My mom looked teary but skeptical. "They make those videos look nice," she said. "But what happens when the cameras are off?" I told her. "I already visited one in person. I met the staff, and they're incredible. They have medical professionals, full-time physical therapists, and residents who actually look happy. This isn't an institution, it's independence." My dad sat there silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "We can't afford that." That's when I showed him the funding plans Meredith helped me find, grants, Medicaid waivers, and organizations that could cover nearly 80% of the cost. All my parents would need to do was apply and cooperate with the process. My mom broke down crying then. "I just can't imagine him with strangers." She said, "What if they don't understand him like we do?" That hurt to hear, but I said he deserves more than just us. He deserves people who can meet all his needs physically, emotionally, socially. You've done everything you can for him, but you can't do it forever. That seemed to finally sink in. My dad didn't say much after that. He just nodded slowly. My mom was quiet, clutching her tissue like she was holding on to the last bit of control she had. We didn't solve everything that day. In fact, it ended with my mom saying she needed time to think, but the difference this time was, I didn't beg, I didn't cry or apologize. I said, "Take your time, but I'm not changing my mind." And I left. A week later, my dad called. His voice was softer than I'd heard in months. "Your mom's been looking at those brochures," he said. "Maybe we should go visit one together." I nearly cried with relief. Over the next month, we visited 3 facilities. The first one was too clinical, the second one too far. But the third one, the one I'd originally researched, felt right. The staff greeted Caleb by name during the tour because I'd sent them info about him in advance. They even let him try an adaptive art session while we talked, watching him paint with a huge grin on his face, surrounded by people his age. It was the first time I'd seen him truly alive outside our family bubble. After the visit, on the ride home, Caleb said, "I liked it there." My mom teared up again but nodded. "Yeah, me too." We started the paperwork last month. It's not final yet. These things take time, but Caleb's on the list for placement in spring. My parents are still nervous. And I won't lie, there are moments where guilt creeps in. My mom keeps asking, "Are you sure this is the right thing?" And I always tell her, "It's the fair thing." Caleb's excited. He keeps texting me pictures of art supplies and saying, "I'll paint something for your new apartment." It makes me smile every time. As for my parents, our relationship is still fragile but improving. They're finally seeing that this isn't abandonment, it's planning. I think part of them is relieved too. Even if they won't admit it, they were terrified of what would happen when they're gone. Now, there's a plan. I'm proud of myself for standing my ground. For the first time in my life, I didn't bend until I broke. I don't know exactly what the future holds, but I finally feel like I have one, and so does Caleb. Update 2. It's been nearly a year since I first wrote about everything. I finally feel like I can breathe again. Things aren't perfect, they never are, but for once, my life doesn't feel like a series of sacrifices. It feels like a story that's actually mine. Caleb officially moved into his new care facility 3 months ago. The transition was emotional, to put it mildly. My parents tried to delay it twice, finding new reasons why he wasn't ready. My mom claimed the weather was too bad one week, and that she wanted to spend one more holiday with him at home eventually. The facility coordinator, a saint named Gina, gently told my parents that these kinds of delays are common and that they were only making it harder for Caleb to adjust. The move-in day was tough. I took the day off work and went over early to help pack. My dad was quiet the entire morning, doing small tasks just to stay busy. My mom hovered around Caleb, refolding his clothes every time I packed them. She kept asking, "You packed his favorite hoodie, right? The blue one." I said yes over and over until I finally handed it to her so she could fold it herself one last time. When we arrived, the staff was waiting for us. They had already prepared his room. It was warm, clean, decorated with soft lighting, and had enough space for his wheelchair to move comfortably. Someone had even placed a framed print of the Chicago skyline on the wall because Caleb had told them once that he wanted to see the big city someday. I don't think I've ever seen him smile that wide. He adjusted faster than any of us expected, within a week. He'd joined an adaptive technology class and started a painting group that met every Thursday. He even FaceTimes me during their art sessions sometimes, holding up a paintbrush and saying, "Look what I made. I've got 5 of his paintings hanging in my apartment now, bright. Abstract, messy, beautiful." My parents, though, struggled more the first month. My mom called the facility every day, sometimes twice. Gina eventually told her gently that Caleb was doing great, but she needed to trust the process and let him build independence. My dad didn't say much, but I caught him crying once during a visit when Caleb introduced one of his friends from the group home, a guy named Leo, who also has CP and the same sarcastic sense of humor. Now they visit once a week. They still bring home-cooked food, still fuss over his laundry, but they've stopped talking about me moving back, in fact. The last time I visited, my dad told me, "You were right." He's happy. That was the first time he's ever said those words to me. On my end, life has started to expand in ways I never thought possible. I got promoted at work to a team lead position. It's not glamorous, but it's stable and something I earned entirely on my own. Evan and I are still together. It's been almost 9 months now, and he's met my family a few times. He even came with me to one of Caleb's art showcases, and Caleb absolutely adored him. They bonded over Marvel movies and argued about which Spider-Man actor was the best. Caleb's team, Holland. Evan's team, Maguire. It got intense. Something that surprised me most was how different Caleb seems when I'm not the one managing him. He's lighter, more independent, even teasing me sometimes like any little brother would. He'll say, "So when's the wedding?" Just to make me blush, or, "I think I like my new roommates more than you." He's thriving in ways I didn't think were possible when everything revolved around our house and routine. My relationship with my mom is still a work in progress. She still slips little guilt comments here and there. I just miss when we were all under one roof, or I feel like I failed him. But I've learned to respond calmly. I tell her, "You didn't fail him, you gave him everything. And now you're letting him have more." That usually quiets her for a bit. There's also been healing between me and my dad. We never talked much before. He was the strong, stoic type who always worked overtime and rarely showed emotion. But a few weeks ago, when I stopped by their house, he pulled me aside and said, "You did what I couldn't. You gave him a future. You gave your mom peace. Even if she doesn't know it yet, I swear." I had to step outside because I was about to cry right there in the kitchen. It's strange. For years, I thought stepping back meant abandoning my family. But it turns out, stepping back allowed everyone to grow, including me. Caleb has a life that belongs to him now. My parents are slowly rediscovering theirs. And me? I'm finally figuring out who I am outside of being someone's caretaker. I've started applying to grad school part-time, something I never thought I'd do. I'm studying healthcare policy because, ironically enough, I want to help families like mine, ones who love deeply but don't know how to separate love from obligation. Last weekend, the facility hosted a family barbecue, and Caleb asked if I'd come when I got there. He was sitting with a group of residents playing cards. He waved and shouted, "Hey sis, over here," with this confidence I've never seen before. My mom was sitting under a tree watching him. Smiling through tears, she looked at me and said, "He's okay." And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to say, "I know." I just said, "Yeah, he really is." Final update. It's been a little over 2 years since I first shared my story, and this will probably be the last time I update. When I think back to how trapped, guilty, and torn I felt then, it almost feels like I'm talking about someone else, a version of me who existed only to hold everyone else together. I'm not that person anymore. Caleb has now been living at the facility for over a year and a half, and he's genuinely thriving. He has his own routine, his own circle of friends, and even his own stubborn opinions about what he wants to do. He's gotten really into adaptive gaming, something I didn't even know existed, and now he competes in online tournaments. Every Sunday, he FaceTimes me to brag about his latest win. His favorite thing to say is, "You couldn't beat me even if you tried." He's probably right. He's also started teaching some of the newer residents how to use accessibility software for painting and gaming. The staff told me he's become something of a mentor figure, which made me laugh because he's still the same. Teasing little brother who used to steal my phone and change my lock screen to pictures of his silly faces. As for my parents, the shift in them has been slow but real. My mom has stopped calling the facility every day. She still visits once a week, but now she brings cookies instead of tears. She's even started volunteering at a local disability resource center, helping other parents navigate the same system she once resisted. The first time she told me about it, she said, "I think this is what I was meant to do after all. My dad's health had been declining a bit, nothing serious. Just the wear and tear of age and stress, but he seems lighter these days. I think the constant worry used to age him faster. Now when I visit, he's in the garden or out fishing again. And sometimes we sit on the porch and actually talk. He told me recently, 'You were right to push us.' I just didn't want to admit how scared I was. That's the closest thing to an apology I'll ever get. And honestly, it's enough. Evan and I are still together. And last month we moved into a small house together. It's not fancy, but it has this big bay window in the kitchen that fills the room with light every morning. Caleb calls it our sitcom house. We're engaged now, something that still feels surreal when I look at the ring. Evan met Caleb officially last year, and they clicked instantly. Caleb insists he's going to be the best man ever, even though we keep telling him he can just relax and enjoy the day. When we told my parents about the engagement, my mom cried, of course. But this time it wasn't sadness, it was pride. She hugged me and said, "You deserve this. You deserve happiness." It took me a second to realize I'd never heard those exact words from her before. There's still guilt sometimes. I don't think that ever fully goes away. When I see Caleb on a tough day, when he's exhausted or in pain, a part of me still aches and wonders if I should be doing more. But then I see how surrounded he is by care, support, and friendship, and I remind myself, he's okay, he's not alone, neither am I. A few weeks ago, Caleb had his first solo art exhibit. It was small, held at the facility's event hall. But people from the local community came, and he sold 3 of his paintings. I stood there watching him beam with pride as he signed one of his pieces for a buyer, and I felt this overwhelming sense of peace for so long. I thought that stepping away meant losing him, but I didn't lose him. I finally gave him space to grow into the person he was always meant to be. After the exhibit, he pulled me aside and said, "You know, I think you saved me," I told him. "No, Caleb, you saved yourself. I just stopped getting in your way, and I meant that." I've come to understand something my younger self couldn't grasp. Love doesn't mean total sacrifice. It doesn't mean erasing yourself for someone else. Real love is about wanting the best for them, even if it means changing what family used to look like. My parents, my brother, and I, we're all different people now. Stronger, freer, still connected, but not chained to the same painful expectations that used to define us. Sometimes when I visit Caleb, we sit in the courtyard together in silence. Watching the sunset, he'll say something like, "Do you ever think about how weird it is that this is our life now?" And I'll laugh and say, "Yeah, but it's a good weird." And it is. It's a really good weird. If the girl I used to be could see us now, Caleb living with independence, my parents rediscovering themselves, and me finally building my own future, I think she'd be proud. I know I am. Stories number 3. My new neighbor won't stop asking for favors. When I moved into my new place 2 months ago, I thought I'd lucked out. It's a quiet little street on the edge of town, with tidy lawns, kids riding bikes, In the kind of mailboxes people actually decorate for holidays. I bought the house after my divorce, looking for peace. What I didn't realize was that peace would come with the side of my neighbor, Diane. Diane lives directly next door. She's in her early 40s, works from home, and has this way of inserting herself into every situation the first day I moved in. She came over with a tray of cookies and asked if I needed help unpacking. A sweet gesture. Sure, but she didn't leave for 3 hours. She talked nonstop about everyone on the street who mowed too early, who was having an affair, whose kid probably needed therapy. I should have recognized the warning signs right there. The first favor seemed harmless enough. A week after I moved in, she knocked on my door, asking if I could drive her to the post office because her car battery had died. I agreed, figuring it was neighborly. Then 2 days later, she asked if I could watch her dog just for the afternoon. That afternoon turned into 2 days because she lost track of time at her sister's. The dog wasn't bad, but it was clear Diane assumed I'd just pick up her slack. Things escalated quickly. She started knocking at random hours, asking to borrow milk. Eggs, detergent, you name it, once. She came over at nearly 10 p.m., asking if I could help her move a dresser upstairs because it was too heavy for her to do alone. When I said I was about to go to bed, she looked genuinely offended and muttered something about how people just aren't helpful anymore. It got awkward fast. I tried hinting that I was busy, saying things like, "Oh, I've got work early," or "I'm on a deadline," but she'd just plow right through it. One afternoon, I came home from the grocery store and found her in my yard pulling weeds. She said, "I figured I'd tidy it up for you. It looked a little wild." I didn't know whether to thank her or tell her to get off my property. It became clear that boundaries weren't her strong suit. She'd peek through my fence if I was in the backyard and start chatting as if we were mid-conversation. She'd mention things that made it obvious she was watching, like, "Oh, I saw your friend's red car last night. Is he staying over?" That was the moment my stomach dropped. I started keeping my blinds closed about 3 weeks ago. She knocked on my door holding a casserole dish and said, "I made too much dinner. Thought you might like some company." I didn't want to be rude, so I let her in. Big mistake. She spent the whole time complaining about her ex-husband and making passive-aggressive comments about how I must be so lonely rattling around in this big house. After that, I decided I had to draw a line. I started being direct. The next time she came by, asking for a ride to pick up her dry cleaning, I said, "Sorry, Diane, I'm not able to help today." She frowned, hesitated, then said, "You sure? It's not far?" When I repeated myself, she sighed dramatically and muttered, "Guess I know where I stand." Since then, she's gotten weirder. She started leaving little thank you notes in my mailbox, even when I hadn't done anything for her. Once, she left a small plant on my porch with a card that said, "Neighbors look out for each other." I couldn't tell if it was a gift or a guilt trip. The final straw came last weekend. I was out on my porch reading when she came over holding a bag of laundry. Without even greeting me, she said, "Could I use your washer? Mine's making a strange noise." I told her I wasn't comfortable with that. My laundry room's right off my bedroom. And it just felt too personal. She gave me this sharp look and said, "Wow, okay. Guess you're not big on community." Then she stormed off the next day. I woke up to find my trash bins tipped over and a pile of leaves scattered across my porch. Maybe it was a coincidence it was windy, but something about it felt off. I haven't seen her since, but I've noticed her blinds twitch whenever I pull into my driveway. I've started keeping my doors locked even when I'm home, and I park farther down the street when I can. It's ridiculous, but she's made me uneasy in my own house. My other neighbors seem nice enough. I haven't said anything to them because I don't want to start drama. I keep thinking about how quickly things spiraled. What started as a friendly neighborly exchange turned into this bizarre one-sided dependency. I'm all for kindness, but I've learned there's a fine line between being helpful and being a doormat. I just didn't expect to have to learn that lesson 2 months after moving in. I mostly keep to myself. I wave politely if I see her. But that's it. My lights stay off early. My curtains stay closed. And I've made peace with being labeled the unfriendly one. Honestly, I'll take that over being someone's on-call errand runner. Update. I didn't think I'd be writing an update so soon. But things have taken a turn I honestly didn't see coming after the laundry incident. I tried to stay low-key. I stopped answering the door altogether unless I was expecting someone. and I got one of those doorbell cameras. The first week was quiet. Almost suspiciously so. No knocks, no notes, no random gifts. I thought maybe Diane had finally gotten the hint. Then came a Saturday morning that threw me off completely. I was out front watering my plants when a guy in a Navy uniform walked up my driveway. He introduced himself as Officer Reed and said someone had filed a wellness concern about me. I froze. He said my neighbor had called the police claiming she hadn't seen me in days, that my car hadn't moved, and she was worried I might have done something to myself. I told him I work from home and just don't go out much. He looked embarrassed and said, "Yeah, she's been pretty persistent, apparently. She'd called them twice that week. Twice." After the officer left, I just stood there feeling this mix of shock and anger. It wasn't even about the police showing up. It was about the nerve. She knew I was fine. She'd seen me bringing in groceries the day before. It was clear she wasn't worried. She wanted attention. I decided I couldn't ignore it anymore. That afternoon, I walked over and knocked on her door. She opened it like she'd been expecting me, wearing a big fake smile. I told her straight up that calling the police was inappropriate, that I didn't appreciate being checked on like a missing person. She crossed her arms and said, "Well, excuse me for caring. You've been acting strange and shutting everyone out," I said. "I've been shutting you out because you've crossed my boundaries over and over." She rolled her eyes and muttered, "You're so dramatic," then closed the door in my face. I figured that was the end of it. I was wrong. A few days later, I noticed little things. My garbage bins moved again. My doormat turned upside down. I thought I might be imagining it. Until I checked my doorbell footage around midnight, Diane walked up to my porch, crouched down near my door, and stood there for a good 30 seconds before walking away. No knocking, no note, just standing there. That footage made my skin crawl. I sent it to the local non-emergency line and asked what I could do. They said since she hadn't damaged anything or made explicit threats, it didn't qualify as harassment yet. The officer recommended I keep documenting everything just in case. At that point, I looped in a few other neighbors. I mentioned that Diane had been crossing some lines. To my surprise, they all had stories. One couple said she used to let herself into their backyard to borrow herbs. Another neighbor said she'd called animal control on them because their dog barked too enthusiastically. Apparently, I wasn't her first fixation, just her current one, knowing that helped. It wasn't just me being overly sensitive. This woman genuinely didn't understand personal boundaries. A week later, I finally installed a tall privacy fence along the side of my yard. The day the contractors came, she stood in her driveway. Arms crossed, glaring the entire time. I ignored her. But that night, she slipped a note under my door. It said, "You don't need to hide from me. I was just trying to be your friend." That was the last straw. I filed a formal harassment report the next morning. The officer who took it recognized her name immediately. He said she'd had a couple of neighborly disputes before, but nothing that escalated this far. They issued a warning and told her not to contact me in any way. It's been about 2 weeks since then, and she's finally stopped coming around. I still catch her staring from her window sometimes, but she hasn't spoken to me. I can breathe again in my own house. I wish I could say I felt sorry for her, but mostly I just feel exhausted. It's unsettling realizing how quickly friendly can turn into intrusive. People like Diane thrive on obligation. They count on you being too polite to push back. I'm not proud it took me this long to draw a line, but at least now I know how to hold it. If anyone ever finds themselves dealing with a Diane, trust your gut early, the moment you start feeling uneasy. Don't talk yourself out of it. Set the boundary, even if it feels harsh, because once you let someone like that in, it's almost impossible to get them out. Final update. It's been a little over 2 months since the police issued that warning to Diane. And for a while, things seemed to finally calm down. She stopped knocking. No more notes. No more weird late-night visits. I'd see her occasionally getting her mail or watering her plants, and she'd look the other way. I started to relax again, leaving my blinds open. Sitting on the porch with a book, even inviting a few friends over, for the first time since moving here. The house felt like mine. Then, last month, something strange happened. A realtor's sign appeared in Diane's yard at first. I thought maybe she was just renting out the place or bluffing. But a few days later, I saw people touring her home. One couple parked in my driveway by accident and apologized. saying they were looking at the house next door. That's when it hit me she was actually moving. Part of me was relieved, another part suspicious. I didn't trust that it was really over. But 2 weeks later, a moving truck pulled up, and I watched from my window as she loaded boxes with 2 guys helping her. She didn't look over once, not even when she carried out her plants. She drove off in her little blue SUV and didn't come back. The silence after she left was eerie at first. No one lingering outside, no knocks at odd hours, no feeling of being watched, just quiet. I remember sitting on my porch that first evening, watching the sunset, realizing how tense I'd been for months. I'd gotten used to being on edge without even noticing it. A few days after she moved out, the couple next door, Lynn and Rebecca, stopped by to introduce themselves. They'd lived a few streets over and said Diane had been trying to sell for a while but scared off a few buyers. Apparently, she'd been telling anyone who toured the place that the neighborhood was full of ungrateful people who didn't appreciate her kindness. Alan laughed, but I could tell he was being polite. We've actually become friends since then. They invited me over for dinner, and we joked about starting a Diane recovery club. It felt good to finally laugh about it. They even helped me plant some shrubs along the new fence lines, something I'd been putting off because I didn't want to deal with her watching me from her window. Last week, though, I got one final reminder of her. I came home to find an envelope on my porch. It wasn't mailed, just tucked under my doormat. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Folded neatly, it said, "I hope you're happy now. I was only ever trying to make this place feel like a community. You'll regret pushing good people away someday." No signature, but I knew her handwriting. It gave me chills, not because of what it said, but because it meant she'd been back here. Even if just for a minute, I called the non-emergency line again. Showed them the note and the footage from my camera, which caught her car pulling up briefly. The officer assured me she'd been warned once already, and that if she contacted me again, it could escalate to a restraining order. Thankfully, that was the last of it. It's been quiet for weeks now, and my anxiety's finally starting to fade. I even took a week off work, painted the living room, and started a little garden out back, funny enough. It's Diane's old potted fern that's thriving the most. I found it still sitting near the fence after she left. Like she'd forgotten it. I don't think she's an evil person. Just someone who doesn't understand boundaries and mistakes control for care. But living next to her taught me something I didn't expect. Peace isn't just about quiet surroundings. It's about feeling safe in your own space. Now, when I hear the wind at night or the sound of a car pulling up outside, I don't freeze anymore. I still keep my cameras on. And I still lock up before bed, but I feel normal again. The new neighbors are easygoing. My house finally feels like home, and I can breathe without waiting for another knock at the door. So, Yadian's gone. Hopefully for good, I won't lie. Part of me still checks my porch some mornings out of habit, but that paranoia fades a little more each day. I guess the silver lining is that it made me tougher. I learned how to speak up, how to draw a line, and how to stop apologizing for wanting peace. I didn't move here for drama. I just wanted a quiet life, and after all that, I think I finally got it. Stories number 4. My husband let his sister take our baby out without telling me, and I lost it. I'm not a dramatic person by nature. I don't scream, I don't throw things, and I hate confrontation. But when it comes to my baby, every protective instinct I have turns up to 1,000. Our daughter Ellie is 7 months old. She's our first child, and I've been home on maternity leave while my husband, Ryan, went back to work a few months ago. His younger sister, Amanda, lives about 15 minutes away. She's 26, single, and works part-time at a coffee shop while trying to figure things out. As Ryan's mom always puts it, Amanda has always been a bit much. She's outgoing, loves attention, and constantly posts every moment of her life online. Before Ellie was born, I didn't mind her energy. She was fun and spontaneous, but since Ellie came along, she's been overly involved in ways that make me uncomfortable. She shows up unannounced, constantly asks to babysit, and once tried to feed Ellie ice cream when she was only 4 months old. I've set boundaries gently but firmly. No unplanned visits, no feeding her random foods, no posting photos without asking me first. Ryan agrees. But he's softer with her. He tends to avoid confrontation and always tries to keep the peace. Last Friday, Ryan was working from home, and I finally took a few hours to run errands alone. It was my first real break in weeks. I left Ellie napping in her crib. With Ryan fully in charge, I even joked before leaving. "No delegating baby duties to your sister, okay?" He laughed and said, "You worry too much. I was gone for maybe 2 hours." When I came back, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I called out for Ryan, but no answer. Then I went to Ellie's room. The crib was empty. My heart dropped. I called Ryan's name again, louder this time. He came out of the kitchen looking startled. "Oh, hey. You're back early. Where's Ellie?" I asked immediately. He froze for half a second, then said, "Oh, she's with Amanda. They went for a walk, I swear." I felt my blood pressure spike. "What do you mean they went for a walk?" "Where? When?" He said, "Amanda stopped by to drop off some coffee. And Ellie woke up, so she offered to take her for a little walk around the neighborhood. I thought it'd be nice for her to get some fresh air." I couldn't even process it. "You let her take our baby out without telling me? Without asking me? Without me knowing where they even went?" He frowned, confused by my tone. "It's not a big deal. She just took the stroller." "They're fine." That's when I lost it. I raised my voice, not screaming, but definitely loud. "It is a big deal, Ryan. You don't hand our baby to anyone and just let them leave without telling me." He looked defensive. "She's my sister. You're acting like she's a stranger," I said. "She's your sister, not her mother. I didn't even know she was here. What if something happened? What if I came home and couldn't find either of them?" He tried to calm me down, but I was shaking. I immediately called Amanda's phone, no answer. Then I texted her, "Where are you with Ellie?" 10 minutes later, she texted back, "Just walking around the park. Chill. She's safe, lol." That lol nearly broke me. I texted back, "Get back to the house now," when she walked in 20 minutes later. Ellie was giggling in her stroller. Happy as can be. Amanda, on the other hand, looked annoyed. "Geez, I was just giving her some sunshine." "No need to freak out," I said. "You don't take someone's baby out of their house without the parents' permission." She shrugged. "Ryan said it was fine." I turned to Ryan. "And you thought that was okay?" He sighed. "You're blowing this out of proportion. Amanda's great with Ellie. You needed a break. She was just helping," I snapped. "Helping would have been staying here and watching her while you texted me. Not disappearing with her." Amanda rolled her eyes and muttered, "You're seriously overreacting." That's when I said, "Get out." Ryan looked shocked. "Come on, no," I said. Pointing to the door, "She needs to leave." Right now, Amanda gave me this smug look, grabbed her purse and said, "Whatever. Have fun being crazy, I guess." Then she left. The silence that followed was awful. Ryan looked furious, not yelling, just tight-jawed and quiet. "You didn't have to kick her out," he said. "I didn't have to. She took our baby out of the house without permission. And you didn't even think to call me?" "She's family," he said again. I almost laughed. "Family doesn't override parent. We are the parents. You don't make those decisions alone." He didn't answer. He just went into his office and shut the door. That night, he barely spoke to me. When he did, it was to say, "You embarrassed my sister," I said. "She put me in panic mode. I thought my baby was gone." He muttered something about how not everything has to be a fight and went to bed early for the next few days. Things were tense. He was cold, barely looking at me. Amanda texted him saying, "I was ungrateful and controlling. I saw the messages. He didn't defend me." By Monday, I couldn't stand the silence anymore. I sat him down and said, "We need to talk about what happened," he said. "I don't want to fight," I said. "Then listen. What you did was not okay. You broke trust. You let someone take our baby without the other parent knowing. If I had done that, you'd be furious too." He didn't say anything at first. Then, after a long pause, he said quietly, "You're right. I was honestly surprised." He admitted that he hadn't thought it through, that he just wanted to make his sister happy and didn't consider how it would look. "I didn't think it was a big deal until I saw how scared you were," he said. "I'm sorry. It wasn't an instant fix. But it was something," I told him. "I don't care if it's your sister, my mom, or a best friend. Nobody takes Ellie anywhere without both of us knowing, ever." he agreed. As for Amanda, she's still mad. She posted some passive-aggressive thing on Facebook about people making drama over nothing and family who thinks they own you. I ignored it. A few days later, Ryan called her and told her she needed to respect our boundaries if she wanted to see Ellie again. She apparently started crying and accused me of turning him against her, but he stood firm this time. He said, "I'm not choosing sides. I'm choosing safety and respect." That's when I knew we'd be okay. Things are still a little weird with his family. His mom texted me saying, "Amanda just loves that baby so much." Like that excused everything. I didn't respond. I don't regret yelling. I don't regret kicking Amanda out. Didn't scream or curse. I was just a terrified mother who came home to find her baby gone. Any parent would have reacted the same. Ryan and I are slowly getting back to normal. We talked about starting couples therapy just to work on communication. He's trying harder, and so am I. But I'll never forget that feeling, walking into an empty house. Seeing the crib empty and not knowing where my baby was, that image will stick with me for a long time. If that makes me overprotective, then so be it. I'd rather be overprotective than careless. Update. It's been about 6 weeks since that day, and I finally feel like I can talk about everything with a clearer head. Things calmed down for a while, but it took some serious effort and a few really difficult conversations to get there. After the whole incident, Ryan and I decided to start couples therapy. I suggested it because I realized the issue wasn't just about Amanda taking Ellie out. It was about trust, communication, and how differently we each viewed boundaries with family. To his credit, Ryan agreed right away. He admitted that he'd always avoided confrontation, especially with his sister, because it was easier not to upset her. That phrase, "easier not to upset her," became a theme in therapy. The therapist asked him how long he'd been keeping the peace at his own expense, and he admitted it started long before Ellie was born, apparently. Amanda has always been the type to make a scene when she doesn't get her way, so his whole family learned to tiptoe around her. Meanwhile, I grew up in a house where boundaries were sacred. If my parents said no, that meant no, and no one questioned it. So we had two completely different understandings of what normal family dynamics looked like. The therapist helped us find some middle ground, she said. You can have empathy for your family without letting them override your authority as parents. It sounds simple, but for Ryan, that was a big realization. A few days after that session, he actually sat down and wrote Amanda a message. Not angry. Not dramatic, just clear. He told her that what happened wasn't okay. That it wasn't about not trusting her, but about respect and communication, he said. If we can't trust you to respect our boundaries, we can't leave Ellie with you. She didn't respond well. She called him almost immediately, crying, saying I was turning him against her. Ryan stayed calm, which I was really proud of, and told her this isn't about my wife. It's about being responsible. I'm Ellie's father. I make decisions with her mother, not around her, apparently. She hung up on him for the next 2 weeks. Amanda went full silent treatment. She didn't call, didn't text, and started posting vague things online, like family should have your back. Not stab you in it, I ignored it. Ryan muted her account so he wouldn't have to see it either. But the real turning point came when his mom called to mediate. She said, "You know how Amanda is? She didn't mean harm. She just wanted to spend time with the baby," Ryan told her calmly. "Mom, I love her, but this isn't about intentions. It's about responsibility if we can't trust that she'll listen to us as parents. We can't have her around Ellie unsupervised." There was a long silence. And then his mom said, "I guess I can understand that." That's when I realized something. Ryan was finally stepping into the role of a father who leads with confidence, not guilt, for the first time. He wasn't trying to make everyone happy. He was protecting our family first. As for me, I finally stopped feeling like the villain in this story. For weeks after it happened, part of me worried I'd overreacted, that maybe I'd been too harsh with Amanda. But therapy helped me see that my reaction came from fear, not anger. A mother coming home to find her baby gone has every right to feel panicked. Last week, we saw Amanda again for the first time since the incident. It was at Ryan's parents' house, a small Sunday dinner that Carol, his mom, hosted. I didn't know she'd invited Amanda until we walked in and saw her sitting at the table. My heart started pounding, but I took a deep breath and decided to stay calm. Amanda looked uncomfortable at first. She avoided eye contact, fiddling with her phone. Ryan greeted her politely but didn't go out of his way to make small talk. I focused on Ellie and chatted with his parents. Then, halfway through dinner, Amanda spoke up. "Look," she said, not quite making eye contact, "I just want to say I didn't mean to scare anyone that day. I honestly thought I was helping. It wasn't exactly an apology. But it was something." I nodded and said, "I appreciate you saying that. I just need you to understand that taking Ellie without telling me was terrifying. That's not something we can ever have happen again." She nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get it now. I guess I didn't think about it from your side," Ryan chimed in gently. "We just want everyone on the same page moving forward." There was another awkward silence. But then Carol smiled and said, "Well, I'm glad we're all talking again by the end of the evening." Things felt a little less tense. Amanda even held Ellie for a few minutes. And to her credit, she asked first. She didn't take any photos. Didn't make comments, she just quietly played peekaboo with her niece. It wasn't a grand reconciliation, but it was progress. Now, 6 weeks later, our household feels peaceful. Ryan and I communicate better. I trust him more, because I've seen him take accountability and put his family first in the right way. Amanda hasn't crossed any lines since, and we've all agreed that anytime she wants to see Ellie, she texts both of us to coordinate sometimes. I still think about that afternoon, walking into an empty nursery and feeling my stomach drop. That moment burned something into me, but instead of letting it sit as a scar, I'm choosing to see it as a lesson. Boundaries aren't about control, they're about safety. And family shouldn't make you feel crazy for wanting both, Ryan told me last night. I didn't realize how much you were carrying until that happened. You've been in constant mom mode while I was still trying to keep everyone happy, I told him. I don't need everyone happy, I need us united. He smiled and said, "We are now, and for the first time in months, I believe him." Update 2. It's been about 3 months since I last posted, and a lot has happened. Some hard moments, some surprisingly good ones. I honestly didn't expect to write another update, but enough people reached out asking how things turned out, and truthfully, I think sharing this might help someone else going through similar family boundary chaos. After that tense dinner where Amanda gave her half apology, things were peaceful for a while. Too peaceful, actually. It was like everyone was walking on eggshells. Afraid to set anyone off? Ryan was doing great, really stepping up as a partner and father. And for the first time in our relationship, I saw him setting boundaries with confidence. He even told his mom that we wouldn't do unannounced visits anymore. Carol wasn't thrilled, but she accepted it. Amanda, on the other hand, stayed distant. We didn't hear from her for weeks. She'd occasionally like a picture of Ellie on social media, but that was it. I figured that was fine. Space was healthy. I wasn't looking to be best friends with her, just civil. Then, about a month ago, she texted both Ryan and me out of nowhere. "Hey, I wanted to ask if I can take Ellie to the zoo this weekend. I thought it'd be fun. And I'd send you pics." It took me a few minutes to even process the message. I appreciated that, she asked, but I also didn't feel ready to trust her like that yet. I told Ryan, "She's making an effort. But I don't feel comfortable with her taking Ellie anywhere alone," he agreed, and we decided to respond together. Ryan texted back, "We appreciate you asking. We're not ready for Ellie to go out without us yet, but maybe we can all go together sometime?" Amanda read it but didn't reply. 2 days later, Carol called. She said Amanda was hurt that we didn't trust her and felt like she'd never get a chance to be part of Ellie's life again. I told Carol calmly, "Trust takes time. It's not gone forever. But it needs to be rebuilt." Carol didn't argue this time. She just said, "I understand," which honestly shocked me. That could have been the end of it, but Amanda being Amanda. It wasn't. A week later, she showed up at our house unannounced. I was home alone with Ellie. I saw her through the window before she knocked, and my stomach instantly twisted. I opened the door halfway and said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" She smiled nervously, holding a bag of baby clothes. "I just wanted to drop these off. I saw them on sale and thought of her." I thanked her politely. Still keeping the door between us? That's thoughtful. But next time, can you text before coming by? Ellie's napping. She sighed dramatically. I just wanted to do something nice. You make me feel like I have to get permission to breathe. I took a breath, trying to stay calm. This isn't about control. Amanda, it's about boundaries. You know why we need them? She muttered, You're making everything so cold. I said, No, I'm making it respectful. You crossed a line once, and it scared me. I'm trying to rebuild trust, not punish you, to my surprise. She didn't argue. She looked down, nodded slightly, and said, Okay, I get it. I'm sorry it was quiet. But it sounded genuine, I told her. I appreciate that. I want us to be okay. I really do. But you have to meet me halfway. That was the first real human moment we'd had since all of this began. She nodded again and said, I'll text next time. Then she left. Later that evening, Ryan came home, and I told him what happened. He was cautious but hopeful. Maybe she's finally realizing this isn't about sides, he said, and honestly, feels like she is. Since then, Amanda has been making an effort. She's texted a few times to ask how Ellie's doing, and she always phrases things respectfully. A couple of weekends ago, she came over after checking first, brought lunch, and stayed for just an hour. She played with Ellie, chatted a little, didn't mention the past once, and when it was time to go, she said, Thanks for letting me visit. I had fun that night. Ryan actually looked emotional. He said, This is what I always wanted, for everyone to get along. I told him, Me too. I just needed to know we could do that safely. We're still not at the take Ellie out alone stage. Maybe we won't be for a long time, but that's okay. Amanda hasn't pushed it again. She's finally respecting the boundaries we set. And I can tell it's making things easier for everyone. Even Carol seems relieved, she told Ryan the other day. You two are doing a great job as parents, coming from her. That's practically a miracle. On a personal level, I've learned so much from all this. Before, I used to think setting boundaries was selfish, that it meant shutting people out. But it's the opposite. Boundaries keep relationships possible because they protect them from resentment. Ryan and I are stronger than ever. Therapy has helped us understand each other better, not just as partners, but as parents. He told me last week, You taught me that being nice doesn't always mean being right. We still laugh about how keeping the peace used to mean letting chaos slide. Now, peace means being clear, honest, and on the same team. As for Amanda, I won't pretend we're best friends now. But we're finally in a place where I can see a future where Ellie has an aunt who's involved in a healthy way, and that matters to me, looking back. I don't regret a single thing, not yelling that day, not setting hard lines, not insisting on therapy. Every bit of it was worth it to protect my daughter and rebuild trust in my marriage. If I've learned one lasting lesson, it's this. Parenthood changes everything, not just your routines, but your relationships. It forces you to reevaluate who's safe, who respects you, and who truly deserves access to your world. And if people call you overprotective for that, so be it. I'll take overprotective over reckless any day. Now, when I watch Ryan holding Ellie.com, steady, confident, I see the man I always hoped he'd be. And for the first time, I know we're not just surviving this chapter, we're growing through it. Final update. It's been almost 8 months since I first shared what happened with Amanda, taking Ellie without permission. And honestly, our lives look very different now. Peaceful, stable, even warm at times. Writing this update feels like closing a long, messy chapter I never thought would end. After that last post, things stayed calm for a few weeks. But the real change didn't happen until Ellie's first birthday. I'd been dreading it, to be honest. Family gatherings with Ryan's side had always been tense since the baby incident, and I was nervous about how it would go. Ryan and I talked about it for days. We both agreed we wanted Ellie's day to be about joy, not drama. When the day came, I was shocked by how well it went. Amanda showed up right on time with a small wrapped box and a handwritten card. She didn't try to take over, didn't act awkward, just smiled, said hello, and asked where she could put her gift. Inside the box was a handmade scrapbook with pictures she'd printed from our shared box, his family album, even ones I'd posted online. Each page had a little note for Ellie, like your first smile, your first Christmas, and your first time at the park. I was honestly speechless. She'd clearly spent hours making it. I looked up and saw her standing quietly in the corner, watching Ellie with this soft, emotional look. Not the smugness or defensiveness I used to see. I walked over and said, "This is beautiful, Amanda. Thank you." She just nodded and said, "I wanted her to have something she could look at when she's older." It wasn't just the gift, it was her energy. Calm, humble, almost shy. Carol noticed it too. She leaned over to me later and whispered, "She's trying, sweetheart." For the first time, I actually agreed. Ryan was beaming that day. It was the first family event where he didn't have to play referee. He took a moment during cake cutting to thank everyone for coming and said, "It means a lot that we're all here together, peacefully. Ellie's lucky to have such a loving family." His voice cracked when he said loving. I could tell it was a mix of relief and gratitude. After the party, Amanda came up to me quietly and said, "Can I talk to you for a second?" I braced myself but followed her to the porch. She said, "I just want to say I'm really sorry for everything I did. Not just taking Ellie, for how I handled it after. I thought I knew better than you. And I didn't. I was wrong. For a second, I didn't even know what to say. I'd waited months to hear something like that. But hearing it genuinely with no defensiveness was overwhelming. I told her, "Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it more than you know." Then she said something that hit me deeply. "When I saw how scared you were that day, I told myself you were overreacting, but I get it now. You weren't scared of me. You were scared because she's your baby." And I disrespected that. That moment felt like a full circle. I felt something loosen inside me. All that bitterness I'd been holding on to for months. I softened. Since then, Amanda has been making consistent effort, not just gestures. She texts before visiting. She asks what's okay instead of assuming. Sometimes she'll just drop off groceries or little things for Ellie with a note saying, "No pressure." Just wanted to help. There's no manipulation, no guilt trips, just quiet respect. Even Ryan said to me one night, "It's like she finally understands boundaries don't mean exclusion." We've started having family dinners again, slow, cautious reintroductions. I always make sure to host at our place because that's where I feel comfortable, and honestly, the vibe has been shockingly good. We laugh, we talk, we take turns holding Ellie. It doesn't feel like walking through a minefield anymore. Carol has also changed a lot. I think seeing Amanda and me slowly rebuild things opened her eyes. She even apologized once for how she used to smooth things over instead of holding Amanda accountable. "I just didn't want the family to fight," she told me, but I realize now I made it worse by pretending everything was fine. That meant a lot, because for a long time I felt like the villain in Ryan's family, the strict one, the control freak. Now I finally feel like they see I was just being a mom protecting her baby. As for Ryan and me, therapy honestly saved us. We learned how to communicate without turning every disagreement into a loyalty test. He's so much more mindful now. If he gets a text from Amanda or Carol about Ellie, he loops me in right away. No secrets, no assumptions. And me? I've learned to breathe before reacting, to recognize that trust isn't built by fear or punishment, it's built by consistency. Amanda has earned back small pieces of that trust, and she hasn't broken it once. Last weekend, I actually invited Amanda to come with us to the park, the same park where she'd taken Ellie that first time without telling me. It felt symbolic. She hesitated at first, asking, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yeah, I want this to be a good memory for all of us." And it was. We watched Ellie toddle around with her tiny pink hat. Laughing as she tried to chase a butterfly, Ryan took pictures. Amanda pushed Ellie gently on the swing. And for a moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in over a year. Peace. Genuine peace. Before leaving, Amanda said quietly, "I never thought you'd forgive me," I told her. "I never thought you'd understand. But you did." When we got home, Ryan kissed me on the forehead and said, "That was healing." And it was. It really, truly was. We're not a perfect family. We still have our edges and old wounds. But we're better, safer, kinder. And I think that's what matters most. I don't think I'll ever forget that initial shock. That fear of realizing my baby was gone without my permission. But now, instead of anger, what I feel when I remember it is gratitude. Gratitude that it taught me how to stand firm, how to protect my family, and how to rebuild without losing myself. So, to anyone reading who's dealing with in-laws or family members who don't understand boundaries, You're not crazy for wanting respect. You're not dramatic for needing safety. You can demand both love and accountability. It takes time. It takes hard conversations, and sometimes walking through uncomfortable silence. But it's possible. I've seen it. I've lived it. And as I sit here now, Ellie asleep in her crib, Ryan reading on the couch, and Amanda texting to ask, "Is it okay if I stop by tomorrow to drop off some cookies?" I smile and reply, "Sure. Thanks for checking, and I mean it." Stories number 5. My best friend's wedding made me realize I wasn't really her friend. When my best friend from college, Brooke, got engaged last year, I was genuinely thrilled for her. We'd been close since freshman year, roommates, confidants, the kind of friends who could finish each other's sentences. She'd been with her fiancé, Tyler, for about 3 years. And honestly, he seemed like a good guy. They had that kind of picture-perfect relationship that looked like it belonged in a Hallmark movie. So when she asked me to be one of her bridesmaids, I said yes without hesitation. At first, everything felt exciting. We went dress shopping, took photos, and gushed over color palettes and floral arrangements. But somewhere between the engagement party and the first fitting, something shifted. Brooke started to treat the wedding like a performance, and everyone around her became stage props. The sweet, funny friend I'd known turned into someone I barely recognized. It started small during one of our group chats. She messaged the bridesmaids about contributing to her bridal vision, basically. She wanted each of us to pay for her pre-wedding events, spa day, brunches, and even part of her bachelorette trip to Nashville. I didn't love it, but I thought, it's her big day, I can stretch my budget. Except the stretch turned into a complete financial yoga session. She picked bridesmaid dresses that were nearly $400 each, plus matching shoes, jewelry, and makeup appointments that we were strongly encouraged to book with her stylist. The hotel for the wedding weekend was $300 a night, and she insisted we all stay there for the aesthetic. I tried to bring it up gently once, saying, "Hey, I love you, but this is adding up fast. Maybe we could simplify a few things." Her response was, "Icy. If it's too much for you, I totally understand if you can't be part of the bridal party." That stung. We'd been through everything together: breakups, late-night study sessions, moving across states after college, and now I was being treated like a disposable extra in her movie. But I bit my tongue and stayed in. I didn't want to make drama or disappoint her. Then came the bachelorette trip. She planned it for a long weekend in Nashville, but the cost ballooned out of control. Flights, Airbnb, matching outfits, meals, and a mandatory gift for the bride. The total came to nearly $1,200 per person when I told her I couldn't afford it. She said, "Oh, come on, you can put it on a credit card." It's once in a lifetime I did not. I sent her a heartfelt text explaining that I couldn't go but would celebrate when she got back. She read it and didn't reply for 2 days. When she finally did, she said, "I'm disappointed, but I get it. Some people just can't prioritize friendship the same way." That line burned in my brain. After that, things between us were never quite the same. The wedding planning kept escalating, and Brooke became more controlling. She'd send long group texts dictating what lipstick shade we had to wear, what hairstyle fit her vision, and even what kind of nail polish wouldn't clash with the photos at one point. She asked me to change my hair color, my actual hair color, because she thought it would stand out too much next to her pastel theme. I wish I was kidding. The final straw came 2 months before the wedding. I was working overtime to catch up on bills, and my car needed expensive repairs. I texted Brooke to tell her I might need to scale back my involvement and possibly skip the rehearsal dinner if I couldn't afford another hotel night. She called me later that night. "Furious, you're ruining the symmetry of the photos. You knew what you signed up for when you agreed to be a bridesmaid?" I tried to stay calm, but my voice cracked when I said, "Brooke, I love you, but I'm drowning here. This isn't fun anymore." She went quiet for a second, then said, "I just didn't realize you were so selfish." After that call, I sat on my couch and cried. I felt like I'd lost my best friend somewhere in the middle of color swatches and Pinterest boards. For the next few days, I went back and forth about what to do. My stomach was in knots. Every part of me wanted to show up for her. But I also couldn't ignore how awful she'd made me feel, so, a week later, I made the hardest decision I've ever made in a friendship. I called her and told her I couldn't be in the wedding. I tried to be gentle. I told her I loved her, that I wanted her day to be beautiful, but I couldn't afford it emotionally or financially. There was a long silence on the other end before she said, flatly, "So you're quitting?" "I'm not quitting," I said. "I'm just setting a boundary." She laughed. "Wow, boundaries. Okay, well, thanks for ruining my wedding party count. Guess I'll have to explain to everyone why my best friend bailed. That was the last time we spoke for weeks." I mailed her a handwritten note afterward, not a gift, just a genuine letter wishing her happiness and explaining that I was stepping back because I needed to protect myself. I didn't want to send something out of guilt. I wanted her to know I still cared, but couldn't keep bleeding money and sanity for a friendship that no longer felt mutual. The wedding came and went. I didn't go. I saw pictures online through mutual friends. She looked stunning, I won't lie. But it was also strange seeing all the other bridesmaids in perfect formation, smiling like nothing had ever gone wrong. I wondered if she missed me at all, or if she'd already rewritten me out of her story. About a month later, she reached out. The text just said, "Hope you're doing okay." It took me a day to decide whether to respond. I finally said, "I am. I hope you are too." That was it. She didn't reply. It's been almost 6 months since then, and I've accepted that maybe our friendship ended the moment it became conditional. I still miss the version of her that existed before the wedding planning consumed everything. But I also know I did the right thing. I wasn't just declining an invitation. I was walking away from being taken for granted. Sometimes love means showing up no matter what. But sometimes love means letting go. Update. It's been almost a year since Brooke's wedding, and I didn't think I'd ever talk about her again. But something happened recently that forced me to confront everything I'd tried to neatly file away as the past. I hadn't heard from Brooke since that short, awkward "hope you're doing okay" text after her wedding. I figured that was our quiet, mutual way of closing the door. We weren't enemies. But we weren't friends anymore either. Just two people who used to be close, drifting on separate paths. Life filled in the space she left. I got promoted at work. Started seeing someone seriously. His name's Matt, and he's actually kind, and for the first time in a long while. My finances and mental health both felt stable. Then out of nowhere, I got an invitation in the mail at first. I thought it was a holiday card, but it was a baby shower invite. Brooke's name was on it. I won't lie, my stomach dropped. I hadn't even known she was pregnant. The card said Brooke and Tyler are thrilled to announce baby girl H arriving this summer. The shower date was only 2 weeks away. There was a handwritten note at the bottom. "I know it's been a while, but I'd really love to see you there if you can make it. B." I just sat at my kitchen counter staring at that card for a solid 10 minutes. Part of me felt happy for her. Genuinely, I'd always known Brooke wanted kids, and I could imagine how thrilled she must be. But the other part of me, the part that still remembered the way she'd made me feel small and disposable, felt uneasy. It's not that I was angry anymore, just wary. I didn't know if this was her way of reconnecting, or if she simply wanted a bigger turnout and more gifts for her baby shower. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to go no gifts, just to see if she really wanted to rebuild something real. The shower was at this gorgeous wine bar event space downtown. The moment I walked in, I spotted her glowing. Radiant, belly rounded, hair curled perfectly for a second. It was like we were 22 again, sitting in our dorm room talking about the future. Then she saw me. Her eyes widened, and she broke into this big smile that looked genuine enough to disarm me completely. She hugged me like no time had passed. "I can't believe you came," she said, almost breathless. "You look amazing." It was strange, warm, but cautious. I gave her the same line back. And we talked a little before she was whisked away by a flock of other guests. I sat at a table with a few familiar faces, 2 bridesmaids from the wedding. Actually, they looked surprised to see me, but were polite. They told me Brooke and Tyler had moved into a new house, that she'd started working part-time, and that pregnancy had mellowed her out a lot halfway through the party. She came back to sit beside me. I was expecting small talk, but what she said next caught me off guard. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. Twisting her bracelet, I was a total nightmare last year. I don't know what came over me. The wedding just made me lose perspective. I didn't say anything at first because I could tell she meant it. Her eyes were glossy. And she kept fidgeting with her dress like she was afraid I'd reject her apology. She kept going. You were right to walk away. I hated you for it at the time, but honestly, it made me look at myself. I treated everyone like employees instead of friends. I'm so sorry, it's weird. I'd imagined this moment before. Fantasized about her finally realizing how awful she'd been. But when it actually happened, I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt calm, tired, but calm, I told her. Thank you for saying that. I really did love you, Brooke. I just couldn't keep being the only one showing up, she nodded. Tears starting to spill. I know. I get it now. You were always the one holding everything together. And I took advantage of that. We ended up talking for almost an hour in a quiet corner of the room. She told me that after the wedding, several people in her bridal party drifted too, apparently. One of the bridesmaids, her cousin, called her out for being controlling. And they haven't spoken since. Brooke said that loneliness forced her to rethink everything. I burned a lot of bridges, she said. And I didn't realize how much I missed you until I couldn't just text you about random things anymore. I didn't know what to say. So I just squeezed her hand at the end of the shower. She handed me a little favor bag like everyone else's. But inside mine was something different. A small framed photo of us from college. Sitting on the campus steps laughing, there was a note tucked behind it. For the person who always showed up for me. Even when I didn't deserve it, I cried in my car after I left. Since that day, we've been slowly rebuilding something. Not what we had before that version of our friendship died a long time ago, but something gentler. More honest, she texts occasionally now. Nothing heavy. Just small updates or funny memes like old times. I've met Tyler again too, and he's changed in the best way. Calmer, more grounded. He even apologized in his own awkward way, saying she was stressed. But we both learned a lot from that year. It's not all perfect. There's still a distance, a quiet acknowledgement that we're different people now, and we can't pretend the past didn't happen, but it's peaceful. And when she sent me a picture of her newborn daughter, Lila, a few weeks ago, my heart melted. I sent flowers and a card that said, "Congratulations, I'm proud of you because I am." Sometimes friendships end and stay buried. But sometimes, when enough time passes and both people grow, they can come back not as replicas of what they were, but as softer, wiser versions of what they could have been. I don't know if Brooke and I will ever be as close as we were in college. And honestly, I don't think we need to be. What we have now feels real, balanced, and rooted in mutual respect, something that was missing for a long time. When I think about that version of me who cried over losing her best friend, I want to tell her this. You didn't lose her. You just stopped letting her walk all over you, and sometimes that's the only way love finds its way back. Final update. It's been about 2 years since Brooke's baby shower, and I can say this now with complete honesty. I finally feel at peace with how everything turned out. So much has changed for both of us. Brooke's little girl Lila just turned 1, and she's the most adorable, curly-haired bundle of chaos I've ever met. I've actually spent time with them a few times now, which feels surreal considering how much tension used to exist between us the first time I visited their house. It was strange, like walking into a movie set of someone else's life that I once thought I'd play a role in. The house was warm, full of sunlight and baby toys scattered everywhere, and Brooke looked genuinely happy. There was no trace of that controlling, self-centered version of her I'd once known. She hugged me at the door, barefoot with Lila on her hip, and said, "I still can't believe you're here. I think part of me couldn't believe it either." We sat in her kitchen, the same space she once told me about over late-night wine when it was just a dream. Now, it was real. Photos of her and Tyler on the fridge, baby drawings pinned with magnets, the smell of coffee and vanilla candles in the air. Lila kept trying to grab my earrings, and Brooke laughed in that unfiltered way she used to when we were younger. I told her I was proud of her again, not just for being a mom, but for changing, and she told me something I didn't expect. After the wedding, she said, "I didn't realize how badly I'd hurt everyone until people stopped reaching out. I'd convinced myself that everyone was just jealous or dramatic. But the silence made me realize I wasn't the victim. I was the problem. You walking away. It was the wake-up call I needed. That moment hit me harder than I expected. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear her say that, not for closure, but to finally let go of the last piece of guilt I'd been carrying. Because back when I'd declined her wedding invitation, I'd second-guessed myself 1,000 times, wondering if I was cruel, selfish, or overreacting. But hearing her admit that my absence had forced her to reflect, it made me see that setting boundaries wasn't heartless. It was necessary after that visit. We started meeting up more often, nothing too frequent. Maybe once every couple months. It wasn't about rebuilding what we had before. It was about growing something new. Sometimes we'd meet at the park so Leela could toddle around. Other times we'd grab lunch and talk about work life. And how our 20s felt like a fever dream now. Tyler even joined us a couple of times. And I was honestly surprised at how different he seemed. He wasn't that smug. A slightly condescending guy I remembered from their engagement days. He was mellow, affectionate with Lila, quick to joke and self-deprecate. He even apologized one afternoon when Brooke stepped away to change the baby. He said, "You know, I used to think you bailed on her for no reason." I was angry about it. But then I saw how she fell apart after you stopped talking, and I realized maybe she needed that to grow up. So, thank you for doing what I couldn't, calling her out. I didn't really know how to respond to that, except to smile and say, "It worked out, didn't it?" Now, looking back, it really did. Brooke and I aren't inseparable like before. We don't text every day. And we don't call each other best friends anymore. But what we have now feels grounded. Adult, healthy, it's built on mutual respect. Not obligation or nostalgia. I think that's what true growth between people looks like. Not recreating the past, but building something new that fits who you both are now. The biggest surprise, though, came this spring. Brooke asked me to be Leela's godmother. When she told me, I actually teared up. It felt like this full circle moment, like all the broken pieces between us had finally been reshaped into something solid and meaningful. "I can't think of anyone else I'd trust more," she said. "You've always been the one who showed up when it mattered." I said yes, without hesitation. And at Lila's christening, standing there holding that little girl in her frilly white dress, I realized how far we'd come. It wasn't about forgiveness or apologies anymore. It was about understanding. Sometimes people hurt us, and they don't deserve another chance. But sometimes they grow, they take accountability, they change, and when they do, it doesn't erase the pain. But it makes room for something better. Brooke and I still laugh about our college days sometimes, the late nights, the shared hangovers, the endless talk about the future, except now. When we talk about the future, it's grounded in reality, not fantasy. And as for me, I'm still with Matt. He actually gets along great with Brooke and Tyler. The four of us even did a little weekend barbecue recently. And it struck me how natural it all felt. No tension. No unspoken resentment. Just people who'd been through messy, complicated history learning to exist in the same space again. If someone had told me 2 years ago that I'd be godmother to Brooke's child, I would have laughed in their face. But life is weird that way sometimes. The people who hurt you the most become the ones who teach you the most about boundaries, forgiveness, and what real friendship means. So here's the truth I've learned. Saying no doesn't always end something. Sometimes it's the first step toward rebuilding something real. And when I see little Leela call me auntie, I know I made the right choice both back then and now. Stories number 6. My daughter's birthday shirt every year. For the last 17 years, I've worn the same faded blue shirt on my daughter's birthday. It's not fancy, just a cotton tee with a cracked print of some old band logo that most people wouldn't even recognize anymore. The fabric's thin, the collar's stretched, and the colors turned into something between blue and gray, but every November 4th, without fail, I pull it out of the drawer, iron it, and wear it the whole day. Most people probably wouldn't think twice about it, but over the years, it's become something like a ritual. My daughter, Lily, used to joke about it when she was little. She'd say, "Dad, that shirt's older than me," and I'd tell her it wasn't, it was ours. Because it was the shirt I was wearing the day she was born. That day's burned into my memory like a movie I've watched 1,000 times. It was cold, gray, and raining hard. Her mom, Megan, had gone into labor early, and everything moved so fast, I barely had time to think. I'd been home fixing a leaky faucet when she called. And I threw on the first thing I found, the blue band tee. A flannel and jeans. Ann drove like hell to the hospital. I remember standing in the delivery room, soaked from the rain, holding Megan's hand as Lily came into the world. After that, I never threw the shirt out. It sat folded in my drawer for a while, then one year, Lee's 3rd birthday, wore it again, without really planning to. She noticed and said, "That's your hospital shirt," and laughed. From then on, it became our thing every year. She'd wake me up and say, "Go put on the shirt." Dad, we kept the tradition going even after Megan passed. That was 12 years ago now. Cancer, it started in her lungs, spread too fast to stop. She was gone before Lily turned 6. That birthday was the hardest one. I remember standing in front of the mirror that morning, holding the shirt, wondering if it would hurt more to wear it or to skip it. I put it on anyway, and when Lily came into the kitchen and saw me, she didn't say a word, just hugged me. Since then, the shirt became something else. It wasn't just a symbol of her birth, or even of Megan, it was a link between the three of us. Something constant when everything else changed. As Lily got older, she started to drift like any teenager. New friends, new priorities, and less time for me. We still did the birthday tradition, but it became more of a quick acknowledgement than a big deal. She'd roll her eyes and say, "Still hanging on to that thing?" I'd laugh it off, but it stung a little. I didn't tell her that I still took it out every year even when she wasn't home. When she started spending birthdays with friends or later with her boyfriend, this year was different though. She turned 17 last week, and something about it hit harder than I expected. She's graduating in a few months, already talking about colleges across the country, and I can feel her slipping into her own life. I woke up that morning before dawn and sat on the edge of my bed holding the shirt again. The fabric was soft from years of washing, and the band logo was barely visible anymore. I almost didn't put it on this time, but I did. I always do. When I went downstairs, the house was quiet. She was still asleep, and I started making pancakes like I used to when she was little. Around 8, she came down wearing her pajamas, hair a mess, and froze when she saw me. "You're wearing it," she said softly. Of course, I said, "It's tradition." She smiled. But it wasn't her usual teenage smirk. It was small, almost shy. "I thought maybe you wouldn't this year," she said. "Why wouldn't I?" She shrugged, then went quiet for a second. "Because I thought maybe you'd finally let go a little." That hit harder than she probably meant it to. "You want me to stop?" I asked. She looked down at her plate. "No, it's just, I think Mom would have liked that you kept it going. But maybe she'd want you to have something new too." We ate breakfast in silence after that, but my chest felt heavy when she left to meet her friends later. I sat in the living room with a box of old photos I hadn't touched in years. One of them was from the hospital the day Lily was born. Megan was holding her, smiling at me, and I was in that same stupid blue shirt. I looked so young, so sure of everything. Later that evening, Lily came home with a gift bag. She handed it to me and said, "Don't open it until tomorrow." I didn't argue. The next morning I didn't. Inside was a brand new blue shirt. Not the same color, not the same logo, but close. She'd found an old photo of me wearing the original and had one custom made with the same print. On the back, she'd had something embroidered in small white letters. "For every year you showed up, I just sat there staring at it. I don't cry often, but that one got me. I still have the old shirt. I'll never throw it away. But next year, when Lily turns 18, I think I'll wear the new one. Not because I'm letting go, but because maybe, after 17 years of holding on, it's time to start a new version of the same tradition. The old shirt will stay folded in my drawer, right where it's always been. And when I look at it, I'll remember that day in the rain, that tiny pink face in my arms, and the woman who made me a father, but next year, I'll put on the new one. And I'll know she's proud of both of us for holding on when we needed to, and for finally being brave enough to move forward. Update, it's been almost a year since that birthday, and I wanted to share what's happened since then. because I didn't expect how much a simple shirt could change the way I see everything. After Lily gave me that new one last year, I couldn't bring myself to wear it right away. I kept it hanging in my closet, tag still on, while the old faded shirt stayed folded in my drawer like it had every year since she was born. I'd glance at both sometimes when I got dressed, feeling torn between the comfort of what I knew and the meaning of what she'd given me. A few months later, Lily graduated high school. She looked radiant, that day cap tilted slightly. Her gown wrinkled because she insisted on driving with the windows down. I wore a plain button-down for the ceremony. Not the old shirt, not the new one. But when she spotted me in the crowd after, she hugged me tight and whispered, "You didn't wear it? I'm saving it for your next birthday," I said. She smiled, the kind that says she understood what that meant. After graduation, she decided on a college out in Oregon 3 time zones away. I tried to be happy for her, and I was, mostly, but packing her things. Walking through her half-empty room, it hit me how much that shirt had been a crutch all these years. It wasn't just about Megan, or even about Lily. It was about holding on to the parts of myself that still felt like a husband, still felt like a young dad in a hospital room, still felt needed the day before she left. We went through old boxes together, photos, letters, random keepsakes. When we found the picture of the day she was born, the one with me in that blue shirt, she studied it quietly for a minute. Then she said, "Mom would have loved this tradition." "Yeah," I said. "She probably would have told me to stop by now, though maybe not," she said. "Maybe she'd just tell you to wear it for you." Not for us. That stayed with me when her 18th birthday rolled around. It was the first one without her home. She FaceTimed me early that morning from her dorm. She looked tired finals week, but she grinned when she saw me. "Did you put it on?" she asked. I held up the camera and showed her. I was wearing the new blue shirt. She started to cry, and so did I. I didn't expect it to feel so good, not sad, not heavy, just peaceful. The new shirt didn't carry the same weight. It didn't ache the way the old one did. It felt like I'd finally given myself permission to remember without hurting. After the call, I went out for a walk. The leaves had started to turn, and the air had that early November chill. I stopped by the little lake near our house, the one where I used to take Lily to feed ducks when she was little. I sat on a bench for a while, watching the ripples on the water, and I swear I could almost hear Megan's laugh in the wind. For the first time in years, that memory didn't break me. It just felt warm that night. I folded the old shirt neatly, put it in a shadow box with the hospital photo, and hung it in my hallway. It's not hidden away anymore. It's not something I cling to, it's something I honor every time I pass by it. I think about all those birthdays, all those pancakes, and all those moments that felt ordinary until I realized how sacred they were. Lily came home for Thanksgiving a couple of weeks later. She noticed the frame the moment she walked in. She touched the glass and said softly, "It's perfect. Dad, we spent the night cooking, talking, and laughing about the time she used to put syrup in her hair and claim it was an accident." Later, she said something that stuck with me ever since. "You know," she said, "you're still wearing it. Just a different version." And she's right. The old shirt might be framed, but what it stood for, the love, the memories, the constant showing up, that never stopped. It just changed shape this year. When her 19th birthday comes, I'll wear the new one again. Not because I have to, not because it's a ritual, but because it reminds me of who we are, to people who've learned how to keep love alive without getting stuck in the past. It's funny how a piece of fabric can teach you about letting go and holding on at the same time. But I guess that's what happens when you love someone that much. You keep finding new ways to remember. Update 2. It's been another year, and I didn't expect I'd still be writing about a shirt. But here we are, I guess, when something carries that much history. It keeps finding its way back into your life. Lily turned 19 this year, but it feels like she's 29. She's halfway through her sophomore year at college and already talking about internships, grad school, and maybe even moving abroad. I can tell she's found her rhythm. She sounds older when she calls. Confident. Centered, like she's building her own story now. I wore the new blue shirt again on her birthday. Same as last year. It's already softened a bit from washing, the color fading just slightly at the collar. Funny how fast that happens. The morning started quiet. I made coffee, pulled the shirt over my head, and sat by the window where the light hits the photo wall. The old shirt, framed behind glass, catches that morning glow in a way that makes it look almost alive. Lily called me around noon. She'd gone hiking with a few friends and FaceTimed from a mountaintop. Cheeks red from the wind, hair tangled under a beanie. She grinned when she saw me. "You wore it again," she said. "I did." "I think this one's starting to earn its history," she laughed. "It suits you more every year." We talked for almost an hour longer than usual. She told me about a new class she loved, a guy she was kind of seeing, and a professor who'd made her cry in a good way. At one point she said, "You know, Dad, every time I see that shirt, I think about Mom. But I don't feel sad anymore. I just feel connected." That one got me, because that's exactly how I've started to feel, too, for so long. That shirt was about lost what I didn't have anymore, who I couldn't talk to, all the years I had to fill alone. Now it's about what remains after our call. I took a drive to the cemetery. It had been a while since I'd gone. The grass was damp from last night's rain, and the air smelled like pine. I sat down beside Megan's headstone and told her everything about Lily's new life. About the shirt, about how I finally stopped flinching every time November rolled around. And for the first time in 17 years, I didn't cry there. I just sat with her memory like an old friend. Something shifted in me this year, I think, for the first time. I realized that grief doesn't disappear. It just changes form. It starts as a weight you can barely carry, then turns into a scar you run your fingers over. And eventually it becomes something softer, something that hums quietly in the background of your life, reminding you who you are. When I got home that night, I poured myself a drink and sat by the framed shirt again. The house was quiet, the way it always is these days. But it didn't feel empty. I thought about all the years I spent trying to hold on to the past. How afraid I was of forgetting, and how I finally understood that remembering doesn't mean you have to stay stuck. The next morning, I started boxing up a few old thing stuff I hadn't used in years. At the bottom of one drawer, I found the old hospital bracelet with my name and Lily's scribbled on it. I held it for a long time before tucking it into the frame behind the old shirt. It felt right, like closing a loop. Lily came home for winter break last week. She noticed the bracelet right away and smiled. "You finally added it," she said. Seemed like it belonged there. We ended up cooking dinner together that night, her favorite lasagna recipe that Megan used to make. The kitchen smelled the same as it did all those years ago. And for a second, I could almost see her standing there with us. After dinner, Lily pulled out a small box from her bag. "I got you something," she said. Inside was a simple silver pin shaped like a small bird in flight for the shirt, she said. "So you can wear a piece of both. It's pinned right above the embroidered words now, for every year you showed up. I think I'll keep it there. So, another year. Another birthday. Another shirt. But it doesn't feel like repetition anymore. It feels like rhythm, something steady that carries you forward. I don't know if I'll keep writing these updates. Maybe one day the shirt won't be the symbol it is now. Maybe it'll just be a thing I wear. And that'll be okay, because the truth is, it's never really been about the shirt. It's been about love, how it stretches, bends, and reshapes itself through time. And after 19 years, I can finally say this. It still fits. Final update. It's been 4 years since that last update. And Lily just turned 23 last week. I can't believe I'm even writing that every time I look at her. I still catch flashes of the little girl who used to beg me to flip pancakes into the air and giggle when they landed half on the counter. Now she's living on her own in Seattle, working for a small publishing company. And somehow, managing to make rent in a city that eats people alive. The tradition has changed a little, but it's still alive. I wear the newer blue shirt every year on her birthday, even if we're not together. Last year, she flew home for the weekend and surprised me. This year, she couldn't get away from work. We FaceTimed that morning, like we always do. She grinned when she saw me wearing it and said, "You really are going to be buried in that thing, huh?" I told her, that's the plan. The thing is, the shirt doesn't even look that new anymore. The stitching around the collar has softened. The little bird pin she gave me has a faint tarnish to it, and the embroidered words on the back for every year you showed up have started to fray just a little. It's aging the way all good things do. Slowly, quietly, honestly, after our call. I went for a drive to the lake. I still do that on her birthday. It's the same one Megan and I used to walk around when she was pregnant. The same one where Lily took her first wobbly steps. Chasing ducks with her hands outstretched, the water was calm. The kind of stillness that makes you want to whisper. I sat there for a while, just listening. I brought the old shirt with me, the one from the hospital. It's been in that frame for years now. But I took it down the night before. Not to wear it, but to hold it. The fabric's paper thin and smells faintly like cedar from the hallway. I sat on the bench, ran my fingers over the faded print, and realized it doesn't hurt anymore. It used to ache to touch it, like reopening a scar. Now it just feels like warmth. I thought about Megan. About how she never got to see Lily grow up. About how I used to be terrified of forgetting her voice, her laugh. The way she'd press her tongue to her cheek when she was thinking. I haven't forgotten any of it. Time didn't erase hurt, just made room for everything else when I got home that evening. I put the shirt back in the frame, but this time I added something new, a photo of Lily on her college graduation day, standing in her cap and gown, holding up a little sign she made that said, "We made it, Mom." I tucked it behind the glass next to the old hospital bracelet. It felt like the right place for it. Later that night, Lily called again. She'd gone out for dinner with friends. But she still wanted to end the day with me. She said, "You know, Dad, I might not come home every year for my birthday, but I hope you never stop wearing it." "I won't," I told her. "Not as long as I'm around." She paused for a second, then said, "Good, because every time I see that shirt, it reminds me that love doesn't really end. It just finds a new shape." That line's been stuck in my head ever since. She's right, love changes form just like we do. It stretches across distance, grows through silence, and settles into the small rituals that keep us tethered. That shirt, 17 years old when I first wrote about it, now 21, has become the thread that connects everything, the past, the present, and the part of me that's finally learned how to live without feeling guilty for doing it. This might be the last time I write about it. Not because the story's over, but because it's finally complete. The old shirt is framed where it belongs. The new one is still holding strong. And the little bird pin shines just enough to catch the light when the morning sun hits it. Next year, maybe Lily won't call right at midnight. Maybe she'll be somewhere new, building her own traditions, and that's okay. Because that's what this whole thing has been about, watching her grow. Learning to let go, and realizing that showing up isn't just something you do once a year. It's how you live. So yes, I'll still wear the shirt. I'll still make pancakes. I'll still drive to the lake, not because I have to, but because it reminds me of everything that mattered and everyone who shaped me into the kind of man who keeps showing up. For Megan, for Lily, for every year that came and went, and for the quiet proof that love, real love, doesn't fade. It just softens like cotton, worn and washed, and still holding together after all this time. Stories number 7. My world changed the day my son was born, and not in the way I imagined. I never thought I'd write something like this. But I feel like I'm drowning in emotions I don't understand. I'm not looking for sympathy, I just need to get this out somewhere. Maybe if I put it into words, I'll be able to breathe again. My wife, Claire, and I had been married for 5 years when we decided to try for a baby. We were both in our early 30s. Stable careers, a decent house, and a strong marriage. It felt like the right time. Claire got pregnant quickly. And everything about those first few months felt like a dream, painting the nursery, choosing names, planning for our future. We were so sure everything would be perfect. The first sign that things might not go as expected came during our 20-week anatomy scan. The tech was unusually quiet, her face tight with focus. When she stepped out to check something with the doctor, I remember looking at Claire and seeing the worry bloom in her eyes. The doctor came in, sat down, and told us they'd found some soft markers, things that could indicate Down syndrome. My heart dropped. Claire immediately started crying. I remember gripping her hand, trying to stay strong, saying things like, "It's probably nothing," even though my own stomach was churning. They offered genetic testing, and we agreed, not realizing how long those few weeks of waiting would feel. When the results came back, they confirmed it, our son would have Down syndrome. I wish I could say I reacted with grace, that I immediately focused on love and acceptance. But I didn't. I felt numb, then angry, then terrified. I remember pacing the living room that night, saying things like, "How are we supposed to do this? And our lives are going to change forever." Claire sat on the couch, her face streaked with tears, whispering, "He's still our baby." I wanted to believe that. But at that moment, all I could think about were the challenges, the therapies, the medical issues, the judgments, the future. What would happen to him when we're gone? It felt too big, too heavy. The months that followed were a blur. We met with specialists, counselors, and support groups. Everyone told us how special and rewarding it would be to raise a child with Down syndrome. But I couldn't feel it. I just felt fear and guilt for feeling fear. When our son Noah was born, everything stopped. The delivery was rough, an emergency C-section after his heart rate dropped. I remember standing there in scrubs, watching them lift him out, hearing his first cry, and when they handed him to me, I saw his face, those almond-shaped eyes, that tiny, perfect nose, and I felt this wave of emotions hit me all at once. He was beautiful, he was mine, and yet the truth is, I didn't feel the connection I thought I would. Not right away. Claire, on the other hand, fell into instant motherhood. She held him like she'd been waiting her whole life for that moment. I watched her cry tears of joy and whisper, "Hi, my sweet boy," and I wanted so badly to feel the same, but I didn't. I felt like I was watching someone else's life happen. The first few weeks at home were brutal. Noah had trouble feeding, and he spent more time at the hospital than at home because of breathing issues. Claire barely slept. I tried to help, but I was clumsy. Detached, I'd hold him, but it didn't come naturally. I'd rock him and feel like I was doing everything wrong. One night after another, feeding disaster, Claire broke down. She looked at me through tears and said, "You don't even look at him. You barely hold him. Do you even love him?" That question shattered me because I didn't know the answer. I wanted to love him. I tried to love him, but I couldn't shake the resentment and grief that had built up. I was grieving the life I thought we'd have, the son I imagined, and I hated myself for it. I started avoiding home, staying longer at work. Volunteering for late meetings, Claire noticed. We fought hard. She accused me of giving up on our family, of abandoning her emotionally. I'd snap back, saying things I didn't mean, things like, "You act like this is easy for me." And I didn't sign up for this. Every time I said those words, I regretted them instantly, but the damage was done. Then came the night that changed everything. Noah was about 3 months old. He had been sick again. And Claire was completely drained. She handed him to me and said, "Please, just hold him for a while. I need to shower." So I did. He was fussing, squirming, making those soft little noises babies make when they're uncomfortable. I started humming something my mom used to do when I was little. And for the first time, he looked right at me. His tiny hand gripped my shirt, and he smiled. A big, goofy, lopsided smile. Something broke open inside me. I don't even know how to describe it. It was like every ounce of fear and guilt and resentment just melted away in that one moment. I started crying big. Ugly sobs, while holding him close, when Claire came out. She found me sitting there with him, asleep on my chest. Tears running down my face, she didn't say a word. She just knelt beside me and wrapped her arms around both of us. That was the turning point. It didn't fix everything overnight, far from it, but it was the first real connection I felt. The first time I realized I wasn't just Noah's caretaker. I was his dad over the next few months. I started showing up, really showing up. I went to therapy, joined a support group for dads of kids with disabilities, and started learning everything I could about Down syndrome. The more I learned, the less scary it became. I started to see Noah as himself, not a diagnosis. Now, a year later, he's crawling, babbling, smiling all the time. His laugh is contagious. Every time I come home from work, he lights up and kicks his little legs like I'm the best thing he's ever seen. And in those moments, I realize I almost missed this. I almost missed him. Claire and I are stronger too. We still have hard days. Sometimes I still grieve the future I imagined, but now it's mixed with gratitude. Gratitude for Noah, for what he's taught me about patience, about unconditional love, and about what it really means to be a parent. Parenthood didn't look like what I pictured. It's harder, messier, and at times heartbreaking. But it's also deeper, more real, and more rewarding than I could have ever imagined. I used to think I couldn't handle being a parent to a child with Down syndrome. Now I realize I couldn't handle not being his dad. Because he's mine and I'm his, and that's all that matters. Update. It's been about 1.5 years since I wrote that post. The one where I admitted I didn't think I could handle being a parent to a son with Down syndrome. Reading it back now feels like looking at a completely different version of myself. I still remember the exhaustion, the fear, the guilt that came with those early months. I felt like I was constantly failing my wife, my son, and myself. But if there's one thing I've learned since then, it's that growth doesn't come with fireworks. It comes in the quiet, unremarkable moments, in the tiny victories that no one else sees. Noah is 2.5 now. He's still got that same infectious smile. But now, it's paired with the most mischievous laugh you've ever heard. He's walking not perfectly, a little wobbly, like a penguin finding its balance, but every step feels like a miracle. Claire and I still cheer like crazy people every time he does something new. I think our neighbors are used to it by now, looking back. I realized the first real shift in me happened the day I stopped comparing. For the longest time, I would scroll through social media and see other parents posting about their toddlers. First words, first soccer game, already reading letters, and I'd feel this tight knot of jealousy in my chest. It wasn't that I didn't love Noah, I just couldn't help but measure him against kids his age. Every milestone he missed felt like a personal failure. Then one morning, I was helping him with his breakfast, scrambled eggs, and a mountain of Cheerios, and he suddenly looked at me, pointed, and said, clear as day, "Dada!" I froze. He'd babbled sounds before. But this was different. He said it with intent. I remember setting the spoon down and staring at him as he smiled. Clearly proud of himself, Claire walked in, saw my face, and burst into tears before I even said anything. We both hugged him and cried right there in the kitchen, surrounded by cold eggs and spilled Cheerios. That one word, "Dada," changed everything. I realized that I'd spent so much time worrying about what Noah wasn't doing that I hadn't appreciated what he was. Every little thing he learned, every hand wave, every giggle, every tiny triumph was monumental in its own way. Claire and I started going to family therapy not long after that. I wanted to deal with the guilt that had built up from the early months. There were things I'd said, things I'd done, that I still carried around like weights. I needed to face them head on. In one session, our therapist asked me, "What does being a good father look like to you?" I said, "Someone who shows up even when it's hard." And she smiled and said, "Then you already are one." That line stuck with me. I used to think good parenting meant perfection, always knowing what to do, never losing your patience, but it's not that at all. It's about trying again after you screw up. It's about being there when your kid looks up at you, needing safety more than answers. Noah's early development has been slower than typical, but his personality has exploded. He loves music, especially the guitar. I play a little, and whenever I strum, he comes running from wherever he is. Clapping and laughing, he tries to play too, slapping his hand across the strings and shouting, "Yeah," like a tiny rock star. We recently started him in a special education preschool program that focuses on speech and physical therapy. I was nervous at first. I worried he'd be behind, that he'd get frustrated or overwhelmed. But on the first day, he walked in holding Claire's hand, looked back at me and said, "Bye-bye, Da." Then he gave me a little wave before toddling inside. I sat in the car afterward and cried like a baby. Because it hit me, this kid, the one I was so scared to parent, the one I doubted I could bond with, he's thriving, he's happy. And I almost missed out on being part of his life because of my fear. Claire and I have had our ups and downs too. I won't sugarcoat it. Parenting any child is hard. Parenting one with extra needs tests your patience in ways you don't expect. There were nights when we fought out of pure exhaustion, when we cried because we didn't know if we were doing enough, but somehow, every tough moment has made us closer. I've learned to communicate better, not just with her, but with myself. Instead of burying feelings, I've learned to name them: frustration, grief, joy, pride. It's messy, but it's honest, and honestly. Claire amazes me. I used to think I was the one trying to hold it together, but she's the reason we did. She's this steady, unshakable force. There were times she was running on 2 hours of sleep, yet she still found a way to smile at Noah, to laugh with him. Watching her be a mother has changed how I see love. The other night, after putting Noah to bed, I told her, I used to think I wasn't strong enough for this life. She smiled softly and said, "Maybe that's because you didn't know what strong looked like yet." And she's right. We don't have the picture-perfect life we imagined before Noah was born. It's not polished. It's not predictable. But it's ours. And it's real. Every laugh, every late-night meltdown. Every small step forward feels like a gift. There's still fear, of course. I worry about his future, about whether the world will be kind to him, whether he'll have real friends, whether people will see his light the way we do. But I've stopped trying to predict 20 years ahead. Now I focus on today, on the joy in front of me. The little boy who calls me Dada and laughs like the world is brand new. I know now that I can handle being his father, not because I've become some saint or superhero, but because I finally understand that love isn't something that happens when everything feels easy. It's something you build, one moment, one mistake, one smile at a time. And if I could go back and tell that terrified version of myself anything, it would be this: you're going to be okay. He's going to be okay. And one day, you'll look at him and wonder how you ever lived without him. That day came, and it keeps coming. Every single morning when he calls for me from his crib and says, "Dada, up," and I go every time. Because this imperfect, beautiful, exhausting life is exactly where I'm meant to be. Update 2. It's been a few more months since my last update, and it feels like everything in our world keeps shifting, not in a chaotic way this time, but in the kind of slow, grounding way that makes you stop and really appreciate what's in front of you. Life with Noah has settled into its own rhythm, a rhythm that used to feel foreign but now feels like home. He just turned 3 years old. It's wild to think about. Sometimes I'll look at him sleeping, his tiny chest rising and falling. One hand clutched around his stuffed fox, and I can't believe how far we've come. There was a time I didn't think I could do this. Now I can't imagine my life without him. One of the biggest changes since my last update is that I've started volunteering at a local Down syndrome support center. It started small, just helping out at weekend events. But now, I go every week. The first time I walked in, I felt out of place. Like I didn't belong among these other parents who all seemed so confident, so put together. But what I found was this incredible community of people who get it. There's no pity there, no competition, just understanding. One night, I was chatting with another dad named Mike. His daughter is 12, and she also has Down syndrome. I told him about the fear I'd had when Noah was born, how I'd secretly wondered if I could ever feel the same love I imagined other dads did. He nodded and said something that's stuck with me ever since. "Man, love isn't a switch, it's a seed. It grows in the dirt in the hardest parts of you." He's right. That conversation changed something in me for so long. I carried guilt for the thoughts I had in those early months, the shame, the anger, the quiet resentment. But hearing other parents talk about their own moments of doubt made me realize I wasn't some heartless monster. I was just human, and humans get scared when life doesn't follow the script they were promised. Now I'm learning to rewrite that script. Noah's speech therapy has been going great. He's stringing together small sentences. Dada, play mama up, go park, simple stuff. But every word feels like a fireworks show in our house. The other day when I got home from work, he ran to the door yelling, "Dada home," and wrapped his little arms around my legs. I don't think there's a drug on earth that could match the high I felt in that moment. Claire and I have also been working hard to make sure we're not just surviving this journey but actually living it. We started doing date nights at home. Nothing fancy, just a movie, takeout. Maybe a drink or two once Noah's asleep. It sounds small. but it's helped us reconnect in a way we really needed. We spent so much time being parents that we forgot to be partners. She's been my rock, honestly, but lately, I've noticed that I've become hers too. There was a time when she carried both of us through the storm. But now, we're walking side by side. That feels good. It feels balanced. Another big moment came recently when we took a family trip to the zoo. It was the first time we'd done something like that, just us three, without any therapists. Appointments or planned routines, we were nervous. Half expecting a meltdown halfway through, but it went beautifully. Noah was mesmerized by the giraffes and spent 20 solid minutes clapping at the monkeys. At one point, he tugged on my sleeve and said, "Dada, happy." I swear, I almost lost it right there, Dada. Happy? It was so simple, so pure. That little sentence made all the sleepless nights, all the fear, all the uncertainty worth it. Because he's happy, and that's everything. We've also started connecting more with other families, raising kids with special needs. One couple, Jake and Lindsay, have a daughter named Emma, who's around Noah's age. They invited us over for a playdate last month, and I'll admit I was nervous again. I didn't know how Noah would react around another child, or how I would feel seeing him alongside someone else's kid. But it ended up being one of the best afternoons we've had in a long time. The kids played side by side. And even though their play looked a little different from the typical you see on parenting blogs, it was beautiful in its own way at one point. Jake turned to me and said, "You know, people don't get it. They think our kids are behind. But I think they're just on a different kind of timeline, a better one, even. They make us slow down and notice life." I think about that a lot. Noah's timeline isn't about catching up. It's about living fully. He's teaching me how to slow down, how to appreciate things I used to rush through, like how he'll stop mid-walk just to stare at a line of ants, or how he giggles when he hears birds. I used to be in such a hurry, rushing to meet milestones, rushing through work, rushing through emotions I didn't want to feel. But this kid, he's teaching me how to be still. Work has changed too. I'm not the same man who used to bury himself in his job to avoid the chaos at home. I told my boss I needed more flexibility. And to my surprise, they were incredibly understanding. I work from home 2 days a week now, and I actually get to be present for breakfast time, therapy sessions, and bedtime stories. It's been a game changer. There's still fear, of course. I'd be lying if I said I never worry about the future, about how Noah will fit into the world, how people will treat him when he's older, how we'll handle the challenges that come next. But I'm learning not to let that fear control me. The other night I was tucking him in, and he reached up, put his hand on my cheek, and whispered, "Love, Dada." And I just sat there, completely undone, because that's it. That's the whole point. It's not about having a normal life, or a perfect child, or a perfect family. It's about this, about the messy, raw, unconditional love that somehow makes everything else fade into the background. I used to think I needed to find strength. Now I know it was never about finding it. It was about building it, one hard day at a time. And somehow, in all the chaos, I found peace. If you told me 3 years ago that I'd be this proud of being Noah's dad, I would have laughed or cried, maybe both, but here we are, and for the first time. I'm not scared of what's ahead, because whatever comes next, we'll face it together, the three of us. Every day, every step. Every Dada happy. That's all the reminder I need that we're doing just fine. Update 3. It's been nearly 2 years since I first admitted I didn't think I could handle being a parent to Noah. Looking back now, I can hardly recognize that version of myself scared, exhausted, and drowning in guilt. I wish I could hug that man and tell him that he would survive this, that he would not just survive, but thrive, and that his son would teach him more than he ever imagined. Noah is now 3.5, and he continues to amaze me every single day. His personality is exploding in ways I didn't think possible. He's so full of curiosity and mischief, and the way he navigates the world is uniquely his own. Claire and I are constantly learning from him. He has this way of making the simplest things magical. A shadow on the wall, the sound of rain, the smell of pancakes. It's like he's teaching us how to notice life again. One of the biggest breakthroughs recently has been his language development. He's now forming full sentences, sometimes 4 or 5 words in a row. The other morning, he looked at me with a serious little face and said, "Dada, play with me now?" I laughed, scooped him up, and spent the next 20 minutes on the floor with him, pretending to be a dinosaur while he roared with delight. Moments like that make every sleepless night, every tear, every moment of self-doubt completely worth it. Therapy continues to be a major part of our lives, but I no longer see it as a chore. Noah has blossomed with consistent speech and occupational therapy. And the therapists we work with are incredible. They've not only helped Noah, but also Claire and me, teaching us how to adapt, how to encourage him, and how to celebrate his victories no matter how small. I've learned that small victories can feel monumental when they come from a place of effort and growth. At home, Claire and I have become more of a team than I ever thought possible. Our communication has improved dramatically. We've learned to discuss challenges without blame, to divide responsibilities in a way that doesn't feel like punishment, and to check in with each other emotionally. There are still hard days, days when Noah is tired or frustrated, or when I feel overwhelmed, but we no longer let those days define us. We remind each other that parenting is a marathon, not a sprint. Noah's social development is also growing beautifully. We've connected with a few other families raising children with special needs, and they've become a sort of chosen family for us. Watching the kids interact is magical. Noah has friends now, little peers, who accept him exactly as he is. It warms my heart to see him share toys, imitate gestures, and laugh with his new friends. For the first time, I'm beginning to see him not just as my child with Down syndrome, but as a boy with a rich, thriving social life. I've also started paying more attention to my own mental health. I realized early on that I couldn't fully support Noah if I didn't support myself. I started seeing a counselor for regular sessions, and I've joined a father's support group specifically for dads of children with disabilities. Talking with men who've been through similar experiences has been both comforting and enlightening. It's helped me process emotions that I didn't know how to deal with before: frustration, fear, guilt, even moments of resentment, and transform them into understanding and patience. One of the most eye-opening moments recently happened during a family outing. We went to a small children's museum, and Noah was mesmerized by the interactive exhibits at one point. He ran to a sensory play area with another little boy, laughed, and threw his arms around him in the sweetest hug. I stood back and watched, and for the first time, I truly saw Noah as his own person, not defined by a diagnosis, but by his spirit, his humor, his curiosity. And in that moment, I felt proud. Not proud in a performative way, but proud in a deep, soul-filling way. Noah has also started showing preferences and personality traits that are entirely his own. He's stubborn, fiercely independent, and loves to test boundaries. He has a quirky sense of humor. He makes faces when he knows he's about to make someone laugh. And he absolutely loves music. He dances to songs we've never even heard, claps his hands in rhythm, and sings in his own little way. These things are reminders to Claire and me that he is not defined by limitations. He is defined by life. Energy and personality, there are still challenges. Of course, medical appointments, therapy schedules, and the emotional roller coaster that comes with parenting a child with special needs are part of our daily reality. But the fear that I carried so heavily when Noah was born has softened into determination and hope. I no longer see our life as a burden. I see it as a journey that is teaching me more than I could ever have anticipated. Even the small, mundane moments carry meaning now. When Noah falls asleep in my arms after a long day of play, when he reaches for me first thing in the morning, when he laughs uncontrollably at the silliest things, these moments are my anchor. They remind me that this life, messy and unpredictable as it is worth every struggle. Claire and I are also thinking more about the future. We're exploring options for continued therapy and education that will allow Noah to thrive. We're learning how to advocate for him in schools. In public spaces and in social settings, it's a new challenge, but one I embrace because it's about giving him the tools to succeed in a world that can be unpredictable and unforgiving. I used to think I couldn't handle being a parent to a child with Down syndrome. I doubted my capacity for patience, love, and resilience. But now, I can say with honesty that I am capable, not because I'm perfect, but because Noah teaches me every day that love is a practice, not a feeling. It is a choice. Renewed every morning, every hug, every word, every laugh, and in that practice, I have found not just Noah's strength, but my own. I'm still learning. I will probably always be learning. But for the first time in a long time, I feel hope, not the cautious, tentative hope of a terrified new parent, but a deep, abiding hope that no matter what comes next, we can face it together, Noah, Claire, and I, the three of us. Imperfect and beautiful, growing together step by step. I never imagined parenthood would look like this. But now, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Every smile, every milestone, every data up fills my heart in ways I didn't know were possible. And I think, finally, I'm ready for whatever comes next. Update 4. It's been over 2.5 years since Noah was born. And I can honestly say our lives are unrecognizable compared to those first terrifying months. Not in a dramatic, flashy way, but in the subtle, profound ways that really matter. Every day, I see him growing, learning, exploring, and becoming his own little person, and it's reshaped how I see myself as a father, a husband, and even as a human being. Noah has changed so much. He's now 4 years old. And his personality is unmistakably strong. He's stubborn, independent, and curious, all things I love about him, though they sometimes test my patience. He has an uncanny ability to notice small details, and he has this infectious laugh that can stop me in my tracks no matter how tired I am. He's also developed a love for stories. If I try to read him the same book too quickly, he'll put his little hand on mine and say, "Slow. Dada." I've never felt prouder of a correction in my life. Claire and I have become experts at juggling Noah's world, therapy schedules, doctor's appointments, play dates. In preschool activities, it's exhausting. But it's also rewarding in ways I could never have imagined. We've learned to communicate better, to anticipate each other's needs, and to support each other emotionally without judgment. I can honestly say our marriage has strengthened, not in spite of the challenges, but because of them. One of the biggest changes lately has been Noah's social interactions. He's forming real friendships with other children at preschool and in our neighborhood. It's heartwarming to watch him negotiate play, share toys, and even comfort a friend when they're upset. These small moments make me realize that he's capable of so much more than I initially feared. And they remind me that his potential is limitless. Noah's therapy has become a consistent, almost joyful part of our routine. Speech, occupational, and physical therapies are no longer overwhelming tasks. They're opportunities to witness his growth firsthand, every word he learns. Every new movement he masters feels monumental. He's gone from saying a few words here and there to creating short sentences. Expressing his needs, and even trying to tell jokes, his timing may be off. But the intent is perfect. Claire and I have also started paying attention to our own well-being more than ever. I've maintained regular counseling sessions, and we've kept up with our fathers and mothers support groups. Being able to talk openly about frustrations, fears, and triumphs with others who understand has been invaluable. It's helped me process the guilt and shame I once carried and turn it into patience, empathy, and pride. The small moments at home have become our anchors. Morning routines, bedtime rituals, and even playtime are now filled with intention. Noah has this way of noticing when I'm tired or distracted. He'll climb onto my lap, rest his head on my shoulder, and just breathe. It's grounding. It reminds me that, despite all the chaos, there's peace and connection. We recently took a family trip to a nearby lake. Noah was hesitant at first, unsure about the water. But after a few minutes, he was running along the shore, laughing, throwing stones, and splashing with abandon. Watching him embrace new experiences despite his fears reminded me how resilient he is, and how much resilience he has inspired in me. One particularly emotional moment happened during bath time. Noah was splashing water everywhere, giggling uncontrollably. I was cleaning up the mess, trying not to slip, when he looked at me with a serious expression and said, "Dad, Love you, that simple phrase. In that exact moment, hit me harder than anything ever has. All the fears, all the doubts, all the guilt, they melted away. He was teaching me again, like he always does, that love is what really matters. Parenting Noah has fundamentally shifted my perspective on life. I've learned to slow down, to notice the small joys, and to value the present instead of obsessing over milestones or comparisons. I've learned that happiness isn't found in perfection, but in connection, in shared laughter, in resilience, and in love. Claire and I continue to plan for the future educational opportunities, social integration, and support networks, but we do so with hope. Not fear, we focus on building skills, nurturing independence, and fostering self-confidence in Noah, and every step forward is celebrated. No matter how small it may seem to others, I still have moments of exhaustion and anxiety, but they no longer define me. I've learned to embrace imperfection both in myself and in our family life. Noah has shown me that strength isn't about never feeling fear or doubt. It's about showing up, even when you're scared. Even when you're unsure, Noah has transformed me in ways I could never have imagined. I am more patient, more compassionate, more aware of the world around me. I am a better father. Not because I do everything perfectly, but because I am present, engaged, and committed. I used to be terrified of the unknown future. I used to doubt my ability to love fully and deeply. But Noah has taught me that love grows through presence, persistence, and vulnerability. And now, as I watch him sleep peacefully after another adventurous day, I feel a sense of fulfillment I never thought possible. Parenthood with Noah is hard. It's messy, unpredictable, and sometimes overwhelming. But it's also the most profound, meaningful, and beautiful journey of my life. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Not for the life I imagined before him, not for a perfect child, not for the ease I once craved, because he is extraordinary. And I am proud to be his father, and as Claire and I look toward the future, we do so with hope, confidence, and the knowledge that together we can face whatever comes next. Noah has shown us the power of resilience, the beauty in small victories, and the depth of unconditional love, and for that, I am endlessly grateful. Final update. It's been nearly 3 years since Noah was born, and reflecting on this journey, I barely recognize the person I was back then, terrified, overwhelmed, and constantly questioning whether I could be the father he needed. I remember the early days vividly, the fear, the exhaustion, the guilt. I remember thinking that maybe I wasn't strong enough, patient enough, or loving enough to handle being a parent to a child with Down syndrome. And yet here I am, and here we are, Noah. Claire and me, more alive, more connected, and more grateful than I ever imagined we could be. Noah is now 4.5, and his personality shines brighter every day. He's stubborn, funny, curious, affectionate, and so incredibly determined. He has this mischievous sparkle in his eyes, a soundless giggle that can make an entire room stop in its tracks, and a sense of humor that is impossible to ignore. He's learned so much: words, sentences, gestures, routines, and social interactions. But more than that, he's taught me lessons I could never have learned any other way. The big milestones have become less important than the little ones. The first time he put on his shoes himself, the way he insists on carrying his favorite blanket around the house, the way he points excitedly at something new in the garden. These moments are monumental. They're proof of his independence, his personality, and his spirit. Claire and I continue to grow alongside him. Our marriage has deepened in ways I never expected. Parenting a child with special needs is challenging, yes, but it's also made us a stronger, more empathetic, and more communicative team. We've learned to divide responsibilities, support each other emotionally, and even celebrate the missiness of life. There are still hard days, long therapy sessions, medical checkups, sleepless nights, but they no longer define our experience. Instead, they exist alongside joy, pride, and laughter. Noah's social development has been remarkable. He now has a group of friends at preschool and in our neighborhood, and it's heartwarming to see him interact with peers. He's learning to share, to comfort others, and to express his feelings with increasing clarity. These interactions are shaping him into a child who is not only loved at home, but also respected and appreciated by his community. We've also become more intentional about our own self-care. I maintain regular therapy sessions and attend a father support group, while Claire continues to find her own outlets. We've learned that taking care of ourselves doesn't take away from Noah. It enhances our ability to be present, patient, and loving. One of the most profound moments recently was during a family trip to a local farm. Noah was fascinated by the animals, touching the goats, chasing the chickens, and laughing uncontrollably at the pigs in the mud. At one point, he turned to me. His tiny face lit up with joy and said, "Dada, love you," in that unmistakable, heartfelt way only he can. I can't describe the feeling, a mixture of awe, love, and gratitude that made every fear and tear from the past 3 years worth it. Parenthood with Noah has taught me that love is not automatic or effortless. It is built day by day, moment by moment, in the choices we make, the patience we exercise, and the vulnerability we allow ourselves to feel. Noah has shown me that strength isn't the absence of fear, but the courage to keep showing up. Even when you are afraid, he has taught me how to slow down, to notice life in all its messy beauty, and to find joy in the smallest of victories. Claire and I are also looking ahead, planning for his future with hope instead of fear. We are advocating for him, exploring educational options, and connecting with other families to ensure he grows up in a supportive, nurturing environment. And while I will always have moments of worry about the challenges he may face in the world, I no longer let that anxiety dominate my experience. Instead, I focus on what we can control: the love, guidance, and encouragement we provide every day. Noah is thriving. He is loved, he is joyful, and he is a force of light in our lives. And I, his father, am thriving too. I am more patient, more compassionate, more resilient, and more grateful than I could have imagined 3 years ago. I can finally say without hesitation, I am capable of being the father Noah needs. Not because I'm perfect, but because I am present. I show up every day, I listen, I love, and I learn alongside him, and that I've realized is more than enough, looking back. I am astounded by how far we've come. The terrified, doubtful man I was on Noah's first day of life has been replaced by someone who embraces the chaos, the mess, the joy, and the love with open arms. I am proud of Noah. I am proud of Claire, and I am proud of myself for continuing to grow into the father he deserves. Noah has transformed our lives in ways I could never have predicted. He has taught us patience, resilience, unconditional love, and the extraordinary beauty in imperfection. And for that, I will be forever grateful. Every day, every hug, every word, every laugh, these are the moments that define us now. And I wouldn't trade a single one of them, because this life, our life with Noah, is everything I could have ever hoped for. Stories number 8. My dad's wife keeps trying to make my son call her grandma, and I'm the villain for not encouraging it. When I was a kid, my dad wasn't really around much. He and my mom split when I was 6, and he moved 3 states away for a fresh start. That fresh start didn't really include me. He'd call occasionally, send a card on my birthday with a $20 bill tucked inside, and sometimes show up at Christmas with a new girlfriend. Then, a few years later, he stopped coming altogether. Fast forward a couple of decades. I'm 34 now, married to my husband Mark, and we have a 6-year-old son, Liam. My relationship with my dad, Richard, is complicated. We started talking again when I was in college. He apologized for being a different man back then, and I believed him because I wanted to. He's made efforts since: phone calls, gifts for Liam, the occasional visit, but it's always felt like he's making up for lost time in bursts, then fading away again. 3 years ago, he got remarried. Her name is Paula. She's nice, I guess, polite, cheerful, the type of person who shows up to family events with way too many baked goods and a Pinterest-perfect outfit. Well, she's also intense. She jumped into the grandma role the second she met Liam. On her first visit, she showed up with a shirt that said "Best Grandma Ever" and announced, "Liam, you can call me Grandma Paula, Liam." Being foreign polite, just stared at her and said, "Okay," but he didn't actually call her that to him. His grandma is my mom, Nana Carol, who babysits, bakes cookies with him, and FaceTimes every week. That's his comfort zone after that first visit. Paula started signing every card and gift tag as Grandma Paula when Liam didn't reciprocate the title in person. She'd look at me like I was the problem the first time she corrected him. I gently stepped in. He'd said, "Thank you." Paula, after she gave him a toy truck, and she smiled a little too tightly and said, "Oh, sweetheart, you mean Grandma?" I smiled and said, "It's okay, he can just call you Paula. He's still getting to know you." Paula's face dropped like I'd told her she wasn't part of the family. She said nothing the rest of the visit. But after they left, I got a long text from my dad. He said Paula's feelings were hurt, that she just wants to love her grandson, that I should encourage Liam to embrace all the love around him. I stared at my phone. Frustrated, Paula wasn't his grandmother. She married my dad when Liam was already 3. And for most of my life, my dad wasn't even in the picture. Why would I force my son to call a stranger grandma just because my father decided he wanted a do-over? I tried to keep things civil. I told my dad that Liam was allowed to decide what he wanted to call people. If he grew close to Paula and wanted to call her grandma, great, but I wasn't going to push it. My dad said I was being cold and that I was making it harder for our family to heal. Heal from what? His absence? His choices? The next few visits were uncomfortable. Paula would greet Liam with open arms, saying, "Grandma's here," and Liam would just wave shyly. My dad would force a laugh, like he could will it into being normal meanwhile. I'd sit there pretending not to notice the way Paula's smile tightened every time Liam didn't call her grandma. One afternoon, things came to a head. We were visiting their house for dinner, and Paula showed Liam this big scrapbook she'd made labeled Grandma's Little Boy. It had pictures of him from social media, photos I'd posted of birthdays, first days of school, little moments I'd shared with friends and family online. She'd printed them all out and captioned them like she'd been there. Things like, "Grandma's proud of her boy," under a picture of him with his kindergarten backpack, or "My favorite little helper," under one of him making cookies with my mom, my actual mom. I was stunned. Liam didn't really understand. He just thought the scrapbook was cool, but my stomach dropped. When Paula left the room to get dessert, I turned to my dad and said, quietly but firmly, "That's crossing a line," he frowned. "She's just being loving. Katie, what's the harm?" "The harm," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "is that she's inserting herself into things that aren't hers. She wasn't there for those moments. It's weird. It's not fair to my mom. And it's confusing for Liam," he sighed. Like I was being dramatic. "You're reading too much into it. Paula just wants a family." Well, maybe she should have thought about that before marrying a man who barely talked to his daughter for 20 years. I snapped before I could stop myself. The silence that followed was deafening. We left early that night the next day. My dad called and said Paula was devastated and that she cried all night. He said I needed to reconsider my attitude because family titles are about inclusion. Not biology, I told him. Inclusion works both ways. And he didn't get to erase my mother's role just because his wife wanted to play grandma. He didn't respond. For months after that, things were strained. My dad stopped calling. Holidays passed with awkward texts instead of visits. Then last spring, out of the blue, they invited us to Easter brunch, against my better judgment. We went mostly because I didn't want Liam growing up with no relationship to my dad at all. Paula seemed calmer. She didn't push the grandma thing that day. She was just sweet with Liam. Offered him eggs and fruit, played peekaboo. Asked about school. I thought maybe we've finally reached a middle ground. Until she handed him a little Easter basket with a tag that read, "Love, Grandma Paula," Liam said. "Thanks, Paula," all cheerful. And I swear I saw her physically flinch later as we were leaving. My dad pulled me aside again, you know. It wouldn't hurt to just let him call her grandma. "She loves him like one," I said. "She's not his grandma." "You can't just assign that role because it feels good to you," he shook his head. "Disappointed? You've always been stubborn." Maybe I have. But I'm also the one who stayed, the one who shows up, the one who knows that being a grandparent isn't about titles, it's about presence. Paula might mean well, but my son doesn't owe her a title to validate her role in my dad's life, and I won't manipulate him into using one he doesn't feel. Maybe one day, if their bond grows naturally, he'll call her grandma on his own, and if he never does, that's fine too. Because forcing a name doesn't create love, it just cheapens it. And I won't teach my son that love has to be earned by pretending. Update: it's been about 8 months since I last posted, and I honestly wasn't planning to write anything else about this situation. I figured it would just fade away like so many family disagreements do. But things took some unexpected turns, and I guess I need to get this out of my system. After the Easter brunch incident, there was radio silence for a while. My dad didn't call for months, and Paula didn't reach out either. It was weirdly peaceful, actually. Liam didn't ask about them, and I didn't bring it up. I thought maybe that distance was what we all needed. Then in late August, my dad called out of the blue. He said they were having a Labor Day barbecue and really wanted us to come. He sounded hopeful, softer than before, and he even said, "Paula's been reflecting, we both have. We'd really like to start fresh." I hesitated. But Mark convinced me it might be good for Liam. "You don't have to trust them completely," he said. "Just give it a shot. See how it goes." So we went. Paula greeted us at the door wearing an apron that said, "Family is everything." My stomach dropped for half a second. But she was surprisingly low-key. She didn't do the overly cheerful grandma's here thing. She hugged me, told me I looked great, and offered Liam a cookie. He said, "Thanks, Paula," and she just smiled. No flinch, no tension. It felt normal. We actually had a decent afternoon. My dad grilled burgers, Mark, and he talked sports. Liam ran around with a water gun. And Paula stayed busy setting up food and chatting with the neighbors. I thought maybe, finally, we'd moved past the awkwardness then, right before dessert. Paula asked if she could show Liam something special. I followed them into the living room, where she had set up what looked like a memory corner, framed photos, decorative signs, all that. And right in the center was a framed picture of Paula holding Liam from that first visit when he was 4. Below it was a plaque that said, "Grandma and grandson love, knows no blood." I felt my stomach twist. Liam, bless his innocent heart, just said, "That's a nice picture," and wandered back outside. Paula turned to me with this hopeful smile and said, "Do you think he likes it? I've been trying not to push, but I really love him like he's my own. I just want to be part of his life." I took a slow breath because I didn't want to explode. "I think it's great that you love him," I said. "But maybe don't frame things like that without talking to me first." "It's confusing for him." Her face fell immediately. "You think it's wrong to love him?" "No," I said. "I think it's wrong to label something that isn't real yet." That was it. The fragile piece shattered. She started crying right there in the living room, saying she was trying so hard, and I kept shutting her out. My dad came rushing in, saw her crying, and immediately glared at me like I'd just kicked a puppy. He said, "Katie, this has gone on long enough. Paula loves that boy. You're making it impossible for this family to be close," I said. "Dad, I'm not stopping anyone from being close. But Liam decides what he calls people. You can't make him love someone on command." Paula was still crying, whispering, "I just want to be his grandma," at that point. Mark stepped in. He's normally quiet in these situations. But he said, calm and firm, "You can love Liam without forcing a title. He's a kid. Not a prop in a family reunion." The room went completely silent. My dad told us maybe we should go if we couldn't show a little grace. So we did. We packed up, said a polite goodbye to avoid more drama, and drove home. I didn't cry, but my chest felt heavy the whole way. A few days later, I got a text from Paula. It said, "I'm sorry things blew up. I know you don't want me to be grandma, but I do love Liam. I'll try to respect your boundaries. I just hope one day he'll see me as family." I didn't respond right away. It took me almost a week when I did. I kept it short and honest. "Thank you. I appreciate you respecting that. Family grows naturally, not through pressure." That was the last message we exchanged for a while. Then, something small but meaningful happened in October. My dad called, not Paula, and asked if he could take Liam to the pumpkin patch. Just the two of them, I said yes, when they came back. My dad looked tired but happy. He told me Liam had asked about Paula, said, "Is Paula going to come next time?" I could tell that small moment meant everything to my dad, and honestly, it meant something to me too. It wasn't forced. It wasn't scripted. It was organic. That's what I've wanted all along, for Liam's relationship with them to be real, not something built on guilt or control. Since then, Paula has dialed things way back. She doesn't sign cards, Grandma, anymore. She just signs her name. She still sends gifts and texts to check in. But it's warmer now, less performative. She even sent me a message at Christmas saying, "Thank you for letting me be in his life in any way that works for you." I almost cried reading it. Maybe she finally gets it, that love doesn't need a title to matter. That being present and respectful counts more than any label. And I'll give her credit, she's trying, at Thanksgiving. Liam ran up to her and said, "Hi, Paula," and she smiled a genuine, unhurt smile and said, "Hey, buddy," before helping him with his plate. My dad looked at me from across the table, mouthed, "Thank you," and for the first time in years, I didn't feel resentment sitting in that room. I still don't know if Liam will ever call her Grandma, but I do know that if he does, it'll be because he wants to, not because anyone pushed him. And that difference, that's everything. Update 2. It's been over a year since that Thanksgiving, and honestly, I thought this whole Grandma Paula issue had finally settled into peace. For the most part, it had. But families have a funny way of stirring up old dynamics just when you think everyone's moved on. This past spring, my dad had a minor health scare, nothing catastrophic. Thank God, but enough to shake everyone up. He had a small heart episode while mowing the lawn and ended up spending a few days in the hospital for observation. When I found out, I packed up Liam and drove down right away. Mark had to stay behind for work, so it was just the two of us. When we got to the hospital, Paula was already there, hovering protectively at his bedside. To her credit, she looked exhausted, messy bun. Red eyes, clearly hadn't slept much when she saw me walk in with Liam. She broke into tears and hugged me hard. "I'm so glad you're here," she said. "He's been asking about you both." That softened something in me immediately. Whatever frustrations I'd had with her in the past, I could tell she genuinely loved him. And in that moment, that was all that mattered. Liam climbed up on the chair next to my dad, who looked pale but still managed to smile. "Hey, buddy," he said weakly. "You keeping your mom out of trouble?" That made Liam giggle, and the tension in the room cracked a little. The next few days were a blur of hospital coffee, doctor's rounds, and Paula fussing over everyone. She and I ended up talking more than we ever had. Not just polite small talk, but real conversation. Late one night, in the hospital cafeteria, she told me about her own family. "I had 2 stepkids from my first marriage," she said quietly. "They never really accepted me. I tried too hard back then, too. I guess I thought if I just loved them enough, they'd have to love me back." That hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. I'd never really thought about where Paula's need for connection came from. I'd always seen it as overstepping. "But maybe it came from something a lot sadder," she went on, "when I met your dad. I saw how much he regretted not being there for you, and when I met Liam, I wanted to fix it. I thought maybe if he had a grandma figure, it would heal everyone, but I was wrong. I didn't realize love doesn't come from trying to fill someone else's empty spaces." That conversation changed everything. We talked for hours about parenting, boundaries, even about my mom. Paula admitted she'd been jealous of her at first, seeing how close she and Liam were, but then she said, "Now I see it's not a competition. I can love him my way, and that's enough," for the first time. I believed her after my dad was discharged. Liam made him a little get-well-soon card. Paula helped him glue on stickers and write his name in wobbly letters. At the bottom, she added in small handwriting, "Love, Paula, no grandma, no insistence, just her name," when we left that day. Liam hugged her goodbye and said, "Bye, Paula. I hope Grandpa feels better soon," and she smiled, eyes teary, and said, "Thank you, sweetheart. I hope so too." It was small, but it was honest. Over the next few months, we made more trips down to visit. My dad recovered well, and the whole ordeal mellowed him out a lot. He started calling more just to chat, not to guilt trip or mediate. I think being faced with his mortality forced him to realize what really mattered, and that meant not trying to force family harmony through pressure or expectation. By summer, something remarkable happened. Liam started referring to Paula as Grandma Paula, no prompting, no nudging, just one day. He said it naturally. We were video chatting. And Paula had sent him a Lego set for his birthday. He opened it on camera and said, "Thanks." "Grandma Paula." I saw the exact moment Paula froze. Hands covering her mouth, eyes filling with tears. She didn't even speak for a few seconds. And when she finally did, her voice was shaking. "You're welcome." "Sweetheart," after the call ended, she texted me. I swear I didn't say anything to him. I didn't even hint at it. But I'll never forget that moment for as long as I live, and I believe her. It was one of those quiet, full-circle moments where you realize growth actually happened, not just words or promises. But real change. The difference this time was that it came from Liam. Not me, not my dad, not Paula. It was genuine, organic, and his choice. That's what I'd been waiting for all along. The next time we visited, Paula didn't bring it up. Didn't make a big deal out of it. She just treated it like it was the most natural thing in the world. My dad looked happier than I'd seen him in years. And you know what? I didn't feel any resentment. None. Because it felt right. Later that night, after Liam went to bed, Paula and I were in the kitchen cleaning up, she said quietly. "I never thought we'd get here." "Me either," I admitted. She smiled and said, "You were right to draw those boundaries. I didn't understand it back then, but I do now. You protected your son, and somehow you protected me too." That sentence stuck with me. Because I realized she wasn't wrong. If I had given in early on and forced Liam to use a title he didn't feel, it would have turned into resentment for all of us. But giving it time, letting it grow naturally, gave it meaning. This fall, Liam started first grade. On his family tree project for school, he drew me, Mark, his grandparents, and without any prompting, labeled Paula as Grandma Paula when he showed me. I smiled and said, "That's a beautiful family, buddy," because it is messy, imperfect, built out of hard lessons and slow forgiveness, but real. And when Paula saw the picture a few weeks later, she didn't cry this time. She just framed it and hung it in their hallway. I think that says everything about how far we've all come. My dad learned presence over performance. Paula learned patience. I learned that protecting your child's comfort isn't cruelty, it's love. And Liam learned, in the simplest, purest way possible, that family can grow in unexpected directions if you just give it time. So no, I never encouraged him to call her Grandma. But I did give him the space to decide who belonged in his heart, and he figured it out all on his own. And maybe that's the most honest kind of family there is. Update 3. It's been almost 2 years since Liam naturally started calling Paula Grandma Paula, and I feel like I finally have the emotional bandwidth to reflect on the entire journey. Honestly, it's been more complicated and more beautiful than I ever expected. After that first organic use of the name, everything shifted. Paula stopped trying to insert herself into moments she hadn't been part of. She stopped overcompensating with gifts, scrapbooks, and insistence. Instead, she focused on building a real relationship, small, meaningful, and consistent. She came to Liam's school plays, joined us for park outings, and even helped him with his first science project without ever demanding recognition. Slowly, she became someone he genuinely trusted and liked, not someone he was obligated to accept. My dad, Richard, also changed a lot. I think the hospitalization and the scare of potential health problems made him see the value of steady, honest presence over dramatic gestures. He started calling regularly, not just for Liam, but for me too. Our conversations became less about guilt trips and more about sharing life updates, advice, and sometimes even silly debates about sports or movies. He started to feel like a parent again, instead of a distant figure trying to make up for lost time in bursts. One particularly eye-opening moment happened during last summer's 4th of July barbecue at my parents' house. Liam was running around with his cousins and friends. Paula was helping my mom, Carol, set up snacks. And my dad was manning the grill. Everyone was laughing, and Liam came running up to Paula. yelling, "Grandma Paula, come see what I built," and she did, without hesitation, without awkward tension. She genuinely celebrated him, high-fived him, and praised his creativity. No over-the-top gestures, no reminders about her title, just love. Watching it, I felt this enormous sense of relief. This is real. This is natural. Afterward, Paula and I had a quiet moment on the porch. I told her, "I'm proud of you, this. This is what love looks like when it's earned, not assigned." She smiled, eyes moist. "I never thought I could feel this. Accepted, not just by Liam, but by you too. Thank you for holding the line." The line, that boundary I had insisted upon, turned out to be the foundation that made this relationship healthy. Without it, Paula's desire to be a grandmother might have been forced, artificial, or confusing for Liam instead. It became something he could choose to embrace in his own time and in his own way. Liam's relationship with my mom, Nana Carol, also remained strong. She visits weekly, bakes cookies, helps with homework, and loves him fiercely. Having both maternal figures in his life, one by birth and one by choice, hasn't caused tension. It's expanded the circle of love he feels, not diluted it. Liam understands naturally that different people play different roles, and he navigates it beautifully. Even my husband Mark noticed the change, he said one evening. Watching Liam show Paula his new Lego creation, "It's so cool to see him excited to spend time with her and without you having to orchestrate it exactly." Over the holidays last year, we hosted both sets of grandparents, my mom and dad. Along with Paula and her parents, Liam was bouncing between everyone, laughing, sharing stories, giving hugs. Paula stayed out of the way when needed and jumped in at the right moments. My dad even whispered to me, "I think this is the happiest I've seen him in years." It's funny. The same dad who once told me I was stubborn and making family impossible now admits, quietly, that he wouldn't change the boundaries I set. He told me, "You taught me something about patience and respect." I just didn't realize it at the time, and that's the thing. Boundaries are rarely easy, and they're almost never comfortable. But they're necessary without them. Paula might have pushed too hard. Liam might have been confused. And my dad might have reverted to trying to orchestrate relationships instead of letting them develop. Liam's 6-year-old perspective is simple but profound. He sees love for what it is, not what it's labeled. He calls Paula Grandma Paula because he genuinely feels affection and connection, not because he's told to, and that to me is the ultimate success. I've reflected a lot on this journey. I had to stand firm, be uncomfortable, and sometimes feel guilty for protecting my son's autonomy. But looking back, I see that every difficult conversation, every frustrated phone call, every tense holiday gathering contributed to this, a healthy, balanced, and authentic family dynamic in Paula. She's still learning. She's still figuring out her place. But she's grown into a role that feels earned, not forced, and Liam thrives because of it. It's not a perfect fairy tale. There are still moments of awkwardness. Moments where she tries a little too hard, or my dad reminisces too much about old regrets. But it's real, and real is what matters. Looking at Liam now, watching him run between my mom and Paula, laughing and arguing over whose turn it is to push the swing, I realize something important. Boundaries aren't about control, and love isn't about titles. They're about respect, patience, and letting relationships grow naturally and for the first time. I feel like our little family has truly learned that lesson. Update 4. It's been almost 3 years since this whole Grandma Paula saga began. And if I'm being honest, it's been one of the most transformative experiences of my life as a parent, a daughter, and even as a human navigating complicated relationships. Liam is now 9. He's curious, independent, and incredibly empathetic, probably in part because he's had to navigate relationships with multiple parental figures. Watching him grow into his own person has been the most rewarding part of this journey. Paula has become a consistent presence in his life, but in a way that's completely different from when she first appeared. She doesn't overstep anymore. She never calls him grandma in an insistent way. She waits for him to use it, which he does naturally now sometimes. Sometimes not. Depending on his mood, he never feels pressured. And she never seems hurt when he decides to just call her Paula. That balance took years to cultivate, and it's working beautifully. My dad, Richard, is also a lot more grounded. His relationship with Liam is stronger and more authentic than ever. Not because of over-the-top gifts or guilt trips, but because of consistent presence and patience. He checks in regularly, visits without drama, and supports Liam's interests without trying to impose his own agenda. The biggest change, though, has been in me. I used to feel like the villain in this story, the one refusing to play along, the one causing hurt feelings. I questioned myself constantly. Was I being too rigid? Too protective? Was I making life harder for my dad or Paula? Over the years, I've realized that standing firm wasn't cruelty. It was love. Protecting my son's autonomy taught all of us how to engage with each other honestly. Without forcing labels or affection, this past summer, we had a family camping trip, my parents. My mom, Paula, my dad, Mark, Liam, and me. It was chaotic, hot, full of bug bites and burnt marshmallows. But it was perfect in a way that only real family moments can be. Liam ran around with a stick, pretending it was a sword, yelling, "Grandma, Paula, watch out." And she laughed until tears streamed down her face. Later, he handed her a hand-drawn map of the campsite and said, "For you, Grandma Paula, that was the culmination of years of growth. No forcing, no pressure, just a genuine bond that Liam chose for himself." Even my mom has embraced Paula in a subtle but meaningful way. They talk sometimes, mostly about Liam and school events. And my mom doesn't feel threatened. She sees that Paula didn't replace her role. She complements it. Seeing those two women coexisting in Liam's life without tension has been one of the most heartening developments for me. My husband Mark also commented recently how he's noticed a difference in me. "You've gotten more patient," he said, "but also more confident in your decisions. You set the boundaries, and now everyone's respecting them." It's beautiful to watch. I never thought that a messy, emotionally charged family situation would teach me so much about love, boundaries, and patience, but it has. I've learned that love isn't about forcing acceptance or assigning titles. It's about showing up consistently and letting relationships develop naturally, and Liam has learned it too. He understands in his own childlike way. That family isn't just about blood, but about trust, respect, and choice. I think back to those early visits with Paula, the scrapbook, the best grandma ever shirt, the constant insistence, and I realize how far we've come. What could have been a source of confusion and resentment instead became a lesson in patience, growth, and authentic connection now. When Liam calls her Grandma Paula, or just Paula, it doesn't matter. It's his choice, and that choice is what makes their bond real. I finally feel peace about the whole situation. No lingering guilt, no worry about appearances, no tension. Just a family that's grown through mistakes, patience, and understanding. And for the first time in a long time, I feel proud, not just of Liam, but of all of us, for making it work in a way that feels honest and full of love. Because at the end of the day, that's what family should be. Final update. It's been nearly 4 years since all this started. And I can say with absolute certainty that this chapter of our lives has transformed in ways I never imagined. Liam is almost 10 now. He's confident, kind, and remarkably perceptive for his age. I often think about how much his upbringing, navigating multiple adult figures who love him in different ways, has shaped him. He's learned empathy, patience, respect in ways that come naturally because he's been allowed to choose his relationships on his own terms. Paula and Liam have a genuine bond now. He calls her Grandma Paula when he wants to. And other times, he just says Paula, and she doesn't react with disappointment. The first time he called her that organically, I saw her beam with pride, but over the years, she's learned not to let titles define her love. Their connection isn't built on a name or a label. It's built on trust, time, and mutual affection. My dad, Richard, has also grown tremendously. The lessons he's learned about patience, presence, and respecting boundaries have completely reshaped his role in our lives. He's consistent, engaged, and genuinely present, not trying to make up for lost time with grand gestures, but showing up when it counts. Even my mom, Nana Carol, has embraced Paula in her own quiet way. They communicate respectfully about Liam, share updates, and have even begun planning little family activities together. My son sees two strong, loving women in his life, and it hasn't created rivalry or tension. It's expanded the circle of care and love around him. The most striking moment for me came this past spring during a small family picnic. Liam was running around chasing bubbles my dad had blown, and he shouted back, "Grandma Paula, look what I made!" Paula clapped and laughed. Clearly delighted a few minutes later, he ran to my mom and said, "Nana Carol, come see my fort." She smiled warmly and joined him. Watching him alternate seamlessly between these two important women in his life without pressure, without conflict, was profound. Later that afternoon, Paula and I sat quietly on a picnic blanket while Liam explored with Mark and my dad. I told her, "I'm proud of you. You've grown so much. And it's clear you love him the right way now." She nodded, eyes moist. "Thank you for trusting me. I was so worried I'd never be accepted. You taught me how to love him without forcing it." It hit me then that our initial conflicts, the fights over titles, the hurt feelings, the tension, were all necessary. Without those boundaries, Liam might have been confused. Paula might have felt rejected, and my dad could have reverted to trying to orchestrate affection. Instead, everyone learned, adapted, and grew over the summer. Liam told me he wanted to have a sleepover at Paula and my dad's house. He set boundaries himself. "I want to sleep there, but I want my bed here too," and Paula respected him completely. That alone shows how far we've come. Liam feels secure in his choices, and Paula has learned that love doesn't need a label to exist. Mark even commented the other day, "It's incredible to watch you all now. No drama, no pressure, just real family." And that's exactly it. Real family doesn't force connections. It cultivates them. It respects boundaries, learns from mistakes, and grows together without erasing history or ignoring feelings. I no longer feel guilty about insisting Liam choose who he calls grandma. That boundary was the foundation of all this growth. It protected my son, allowed him to develop authentic relationships, and taught every adult involved the value of patience, respect, and earned love. Liam is thriving. Paula is cherished and respected. My dad is present and steady. My mom is involved and loved, and I feel a sense of peace I didn't think was possible for years ago. Family isn't perfect. There are occasional misunderstandings or disagreements. But for the first time, I can see the full picture. A family shaped by patience, honesty, and choice one that works because love was allowed to grow naturally, not forced by expectation or title. Watching Liam laugh and run between these people who care for him deeply, on his own terms, I finally understand something important. True family isn't about names or roles. It's about presence, respect, and letting love develop in its own time. And for the first time in my life, I feel like our family has truly learned that lesson. Stories number 9. My boyfriend wouldn't stop complaining during the day, so I told him he couldn't use my car for work when I first met Ethan. I thought he was the most easygoing guy I'd ever dated. He had this calm way about him, never raised his voice, always smiled, always offered to help. I'm a nurse who works night shifts, so calm energy is kind of sacred to me. When you come home at 7:30 in the morning after 12 hours on your feet, you need silence. Sleep becomes survival. Ethan moved in about 8 months ago, after 6 months of dating. It made sense. Financially, rent's brutal, and he'd been crashing at my place a few nights a week anyway. I was cautious at first, but he swore he'd respect my sleep schedule. I even gave him a copy of my shift rotation and told him the golden rule. No noise from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., he agreed. Said it was no problem at all for the first month. He really tried, but once he started his new job as a delivery driver, things shifted. He uses my car for work since his old one finally gave out. That was supposed to be temporary until he saved up for another. But months later, he's still borrowing mine daily. I don't mind sharing he pays for gas and insurance, but what I didn't expect was how loud he'd become when he's home between routes. He has this habit of coming back around 10 a.m. between deliveries, blasting TikToks or talking loudly on speakerphone with his coworkers. I've told him over and over that I need that time to sleep, he always says. Sorry, babe. I didn't realize you could hear me. The walls in our apartment are thin. I can hear every laugh, every cabinet slam, every bro. That was wild last week. I had a particularly brutal run, 2 back-to-back night shifts in the ER. I got home Friday morning completely drained. Crawled into bed and thought I'd pass out instantly. Around 9:45, Ethan came home early. I heard the door. Then the sound of a soda can cracking open, the TV flipping on, and his obnoxious laugh at some meme video. I buried my head under a pillow, but it didn't help. I called out, Ethan, please, I need to sleep, he yelled back. It's just for a minute, babe. Chill. That chill hit a nerve. I got up, marched into the living room half asleep, and said, Ethan, if you can't be quiet during the day, you can't use my car for work anymore, he froze. You're joking? No, I said. I've told you 100 times. You're keeping me awake every single day if you can't respect my rest. Then why should I keep making your life easier? He looked pissed. He grabbed his keys off the counter and muttered, unbelievable, before storming out. That night, when I woke up around 7, I saw he'd texted, you really went nuclear over a few videos. I can't even chill in my own place without being threatened. That my own place part really got to me. My name is the only one on the lease. I pay most of the bills, he contributes, but he moved into my apartment. We didn't talk much that evening. The next morning, he used my car again without asking. I confronted him when he got home and told him that if he couldn't at least show me basic courtesy. We were done, he snapped. You're controlling. You act like everything's yours just because you pay more, I said. It is mine, Ethan. That's literally the arrangement we agreed on. He packed a bag and left to stay with his brother. He's been gone for 3 days now. He texted me once to say he needs to use the car this week until he figures things out. I told him no. He called me selfish. My mom thinks I was too harsh and that I should have just bought earplugs or a noise machine. My coworker, on the other hand, said I should have kicked him out months ago. I'm torn because I loved this guy, and when things were good, they were great. He'd cook dinner, wait up for me after my shifts, and tell me he admired how hard I worked. But lately, it feels like he doesn't actually respect what I do, like the idea of me sleeping during the day is just an inconvenience to him. The silence in the apartment now feels weirdly heavy, peaceful, but empty. I caught myself glancing at the empty side of the bed last night and wondering if I overreacted. But then I remembered how it felt standing in that hallway, exhausted, begging him to be quiet while he rolled his eyes and laughed at his phone. I don't think it's about the car or even the noise. It's about respect. About the fact that I spent months explaining what I needed, and he still acted like I was being dramatic. So, I guess I'm not really asking for judgment anymore. I just needed to get this out. Sometimes people show you who they are in the smallest moments, like whether they'll turn the volume down when you ask nicely. And I guess once you've seen it, it's hard to unsee. It's been about 6 weeks since that whole blow-up with Ethan, and a lot has happened that I didn't expect when he first left. I honestly thought he'd be back in a few days. We'd cooled off before, after smaller arguments. And part of me figured he just needed to sulk a little before realizing I wasn't asking for much. But this time he didn't come back for the first couple of days. I kept checking my phone like a reflex, waiting for the apology text that never came. Instead, I got a short message. Need to pick up the rest of my stuff. I told him I'd be home Thursday evening. He showed up an hour late. Didn't say much. Just packed the last of his clothes and the random junk he'd left in the bathroom. I stood in the doorway while he loaded boxes into his brother's truck. He didn't look angry, just tired. When he came back inside for his keys, he said, "You really won't let me borrow the car, huh?" I shook my head. "It's not about the car, Ethan. It's about respect." He gave this half shrug and said, "Yeah, well, maybe we just don't work." Then he left. That was it. No hug, no goodbye, no closure. For the first week after he moved out, the apartment felt eerie. I'd wake up and still expect to hear him fumbling with the coffee maker or humming off key in the shower. There were small reminders everywhere: his mug on the drying rack, the indentation on the couch cushion, the dent in the wall, from when he'd tried to mount the TV himself. I thought I'd feel relief, but mostly I felt this strange, quiet grief. Then something shifted one night. I got home after a 12-hour shift, collapsed onto my bed, and realized I didn't have to worry about anyone waking me up in 2 hours. The stillness that used to feel heavy started feeling like a luxury. I bought blackout curtains, upgraded my white noise machine, and for the first time in months, I actually slept through an entire day. Work's been rough lately. Short staffing. Endless patient loads, but I'm not coming home already, bracing for frustration anymore. I didn't realize how much emotional space Ethan had been taking up until it was gone. A few weeks later, I heard from his brother Luke. He texted me asking if I still had Ethan's spare work jacket. I did, so I dropped it off. Luke and I chatted a bit, and that's when I found out Ethan had quit his delivery job. Apparently, he was bouncing between temp gigs and living with a friend now. Luke said, "He's a good guy, just doesn't handle responsibility well." I didn't argue. Then came the part that almost made me laugh. A few days after that, Ethan texted me out of nowhere, "I miss you sometimes. You were always so organized. I could never get anything done without you." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't respond a year ago. That text would have made me cave. I would have softened, told him to come by and talk. But this time, I didn't feel that pull. I felt sad for him, but not for us. Instead, I've been focusing on rebuilding my own space. I turned the second bedroom, which used to be his gaming setup, into a little reading nook. Got a used recliner from a coworker, put up some shelves, and filled them with paperbacks I've been meaning to read for years. It's become my favorite place to decompress before bed. I've also started running again on my days off. There's a park a few blocks away, and I go there at sunset. It's quiet. Full of older couples, walking dogs, and kids learning to ride bikes the first few times. I kept catching myself checking my phone mid-jog out of habit. But now I just listen to music and let my mind go blank. The other night, I saw a car like mine parked by the grocery store, and for a second I thought it was Ethan's. My chest tightened until I realized it wasn't. That feeling, brief panic followed by relief, told me everything I needed to know about where I stand now. My friends keep telling me I dodged a bullet. And maybe they're right, but I don't think of it like that. I think of it as learning to pay attention to what people do instead of what they promise. He promised quiet, respect, partnership. What I got was excuses and noise. I don't regret giving him a chance. And I don't even regret letting him use my car for a while. I just regret how long I let myself believe that my needs were somehow unreasonable. A few nights ago, I was folding laundry and found one of his old t-shirts mixed in with mine. For a second, I almost tossed it aside, but then I paused. It smelled faintly like detergent and dust. Nothing personal left in it. I held it for a second, smiled, and then used it to wipe down the counter before tossing it in the trash. That felt like closure. So, yeah. Life's quieter now, peaceful, sometimes lonely, but in a way that feels clean like fresh sheets after a long shift, and for the first time in a while, I can sleep through the day without waking up angry, which might not sound like much, but it's everything I needed. It's been almost a year now, and I can finally say things have settled into something that feels like a real life again. I didn't plan on writing another update, but I ran into Ethan last week, and it stirred up a lot of old feelings, mostly good. Surprisingly, it happened at a gas station. Of all places, I had just finished a night shift and stopped to grab coffee. I was in scrubs, hair in a messy bun, looking exhausted. And there he was across the parking lot, filling up his car, a different one. An older gray Civic. For a second, we both froze. Then he gave me that awkward half smile he always used when he wasn't sure how to act. He walked over and said, "Hey, how have you been?" It was the first time I'd heard his voice since he left. I didn't feel that sting I thought I would. No anger, no sadness, just calm. I told him I'd been good working a lot, still at the same hospital. Finally getting decent sleep, he laughed and said, "Guess I was that bad, huh?" I told him you were loud. He actually chuckled and said, "Yeah, I know. I'm better about that now." He told me he's doing gig work, saving for a new car and trying to figure out what he really wants to do. He seemed humbled, softer. Less sure of himself in a good way, before he left, he said, "I'm glad you stood your ground. I didn't get it back then. But I do now. It wasn't some movie moment of reconnection. Just two people acknowledging what used to be and moving on. When I drove off, I realized I didn't miss him anymore. I missed who I thought he was, and that's not the same thing. Life since then has been good quiet. Stable and surprisingly full. I ended up taking a promotion. It's technically a lateral move pay-wise, but it's a day shift position in a smaller unit. After years of nights, I wasn't sure I'd adjust. But I love it. I see the sun again. I drink coffee in the morning instead of at 2 a.m. I can meet friends for dinner instead of breakfast. I also adopted a cat, a chunky orange tabby I named Milo. He's the loudest snorer I've ever met, but somehow his noise doesn't bother me. Maybe because it's the kind of sound that means peace. Not intrusion. He curls up beside me when I nap and purrs like a motor. A few months ago, I even started dating someone new, Daniel. We met at the hospital. He's a radiology tech. It's still new and I'm cautious, but what stands out about him is how respectful he is about my space. The first time he stayed over, he whispered when I told him I needed to nap. Whispered, and when I woke up 6 hours later. There was a post-it on the counter that said, "Didn't want to wake you, made soup. I know it sounds small, but after what I dealt with, that kind of quiet consideration feels like love. Not the fireworks, not the drum-adjust piece. Every now and then, I still think about that morning when I told Ethan he couldn't use my car if he couldn't be quiet. At the time, it felt harsh, like I was being mean or overly rigid. But now I see it differently. That was the first time I truly enforced a boundary without apologizing for it. The first time I said, my needs matter too, and didn't back down. That moment changed more than just that relationship. It changed how I show up in every part of my life. I say no more often now. I stop explaining myself to people who've already decided not to listen. I don't shrink when someone calls me difficult for protecting my peace. There's this quote I saw recently that stuck with me. Sometimes peace looks like losing people who are okay disturbing yours. That hit hard because that's exactly what happened. I lost someone who couldn't respect stillness, and in doing so, I got my stillness back. I didn't think I'd ever be grateful for that fight, but now I am. It forced me to stop trying to be easy to love and start expecting reciprocity. It taught me that kindness isn't the same as tolerance, and that someone who truly cares about you won't make you beg for basic respect. Last night after my shift, I came home, fed Milo, and sat on the couch with the windows open. It was raining outside. That steady, soft kind of rain that feels like white noise. I made a cup of tea and just listened. No one talking, no one stomping around, no TV blaring, just peace. And it hit me how far I've come a year ago. That kind of quiet would have felt empty. Now it feels like home. Update 3. It's been about 2 years since Ethan moved out, and I honestly don't even think about him that much anymore, except for when something triggers the memory of how loud he used to be. Life has settled into a rhythm that feels normal, and by normal, I mean good. Daniel and I are still together. Things aren't perfect, of course, but they're steady. He's patient, thoughtful, and ridiculously funny in ways that make me forget the chaos of past relationships. The first night he stayed over at my place after work, he brought his own pillow and blanket because he knew I liked my space. Little gestures like that are how I realized I don't need to sacrifice my comfort for someone else's convenience anymore. It's small, but it matters. Milo has grown into a proper lap cat, and now thinks he owns the apartment. Which honestly he does. He's also a notorious alarm clock, waking me up by purring directly into my ear at 6 a.m., but for some reason, I don't mind. That sound signals safety and stability, not intrusion or chaos like Ethan's yelling ever did. I've also started volunteering at a community clinic a few mornings a week, and it's been amazing, helping people on my own schedule. Working with people who actually care about the patients, and being able to come home and decompress this life feels like mine. I no longer wake up anxious about someone else's noise or demands. It's all mine to shape. Ethan texted me out of the blue a few months ago. He said he wanted to catch up and see how things were going. I read it. stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. For a second I felt guilty, but then I realized, why should I allow someone back into my life who didn't respect me when it mattered? My boundaries weren't cruel. They were necessary. He's living his life now. And I'm living mine. Daniel and I even took a road trip last summer. We drove out to the mountains, stayed in a little cabin, cooked meals together, and laughed until our faces hurt. At night I'd go out onto the porch. Milo curled in the blanket at my feet and just listened to the wind in the trees. No noise, no chaos, no demands, just peace. I couldn't help thinking about all the mornings I spent trying to sleep while Ethan banged around the apartment, and I smiled because this is exactly what I'd been waiting for. Work is still hectic, but now I come home without dread. I've learned to carve out space for myself, to insist on my needs, and to trust that the people worth keeping will honor them. The quiet moments feel earned now. I can read, I can nap, I can just exist without guilt. And I've realized that setting boundaries doesn't make me harsh or selfish, it makes me capable of sustaining healthy relationships. Even my friendships have improved. I notice who respects my time, my energy, my routines. I don't waste emotional labor on people who can't handle simple consideration. And because I protect my energy, I have more to give to those who truly matter. Sometimes I catch myself thinking, what if I hadn't drawn that line with Ethan? And the answer is simple. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have Milo curled at my feet. I wouldn't have a calm apartment. I wouldn't have Daniel respecting my schedule. And I wouldn't have discovered that my own peace is worth fighting for. A few nights ago, I sat on the couch with a cup of tea, Milo purring, rain tapping on the windows. And I realized I was genuinely content, not restless, not anxious, not waiting for someone else to behave, just content. And that's a rare thing, especially after years of letting someone else's behavior dictate my comfort. So yeah, I told Ethan if he couldn't be quiet. He couldn't use my car for work, and I'll stand by that. That moment taught me more than I could have imagined about boundaries. Respect in valuing myself. It wasn't easy, it wasn't comfortable, but it was necessary, and now, 2 years later, I can see clearly how much it changed my life for the better. I'm finally living in a space that feels like mine, physically, emotionally, and mentally, and that's something I'll never compromise again. Update 4. It's been over 3 years since Ethan left. And the apartment feels like home in a way it never did when he was here. I've started to understand that peace isn't just the absence of noise, it's the presence of boundaries that are respected. And people who genuinely care about your well-being, Daniel and I are still together. And our relationship has grown deeper than I could have imagined. We've developed routines that feel natural, not forced. And we communicate in ways that make me feel safe and seen. He knows I need quiet during certain hours, and he actually adjusts without complaint. It's refreshing, almost surreal. Compared to the constant tension I had with Ethan, Milo has become my constant companion. He's developed these little quirks, like pawing at the curtain if I'm late coming home from work, or nudging my hand when he wants attention. It sounds silly, but these small, harmless demands are a joy rather than a source of stress. I think that's part of what made Ethan's behavior so exhausting. He treated normal interactions like they were more important than my needs. Milo, in contrast, reminds me that not every noise or interruption has to feel threatening. Work has shifted too. I moved into a unit that allows for more daytime hours, so I can see the sun, run errands, and sleep at night without worrying about someone barging into the apartment at 10 a.m. I feel like I finally have a rhythm that suits me. It's empowering to realize that I don't have to sacrifice my well-being to accommodate someone else's convenience. A few weeks ago, Daniel and I decided to redecorate the apartment. We repainted the walls, replaced some old furniture, and added a reading nook near the window where Milo likes to nap. I even framed the note I'd left Ethan on the night I told him he couldn't use my car anymore. It's not out of spite. It's a reminder of the first time I stood up for myself fully. The moment that changed the dynamic of my life. Interestingly, I've noticed that I no longer feel anxious when a car door slams outside, or when a neighbor walks by loudly. I'm aware of sounds, but they don't dominate my emotional space anymore. I can sleep, I can relax, I can live. Because I've learned that my needs matter. I heard from Ethan once this past year. Again through his brother Luke, he asked about my health and work. And I responded politely, but without opening a door to a conversation about us. I don't harbor anger, just indifference. Our chapter closed when he couldn't respect the boundaries I set. Accepting that has been freeing. I've also noticed how my friendships have improved since then. I value people who respect my time and energy. Small gestures, like a friend texting to ask if now is a good time to call, or offering help without imposing, mean more than ever. I've learned to invest my energy in people who reciprocate respect, not just affection. The other night, Daniel and I were on the porch watching the sunset. Milo was stretched across our legs, purring softly, and for the first time in years, I felt completely unburdened by past conflicts. The apartment, the quiet, the life we've built, it all felt like an achievement I hadn't recognized before a year ago. I would have been exhausted just trying to survive another day with Ethan's chaos. Now, I thrive in the calm I've created. I don't dwell on the past, but I do acknowledge it. That confrontation with Ethan, telling him he couldn't use my car if he couldn't respect my needs, was the start of reclaiming my life. It was uncomfortable. Yes. It was tense. Yes. But it set a precedent for how I expect to be treated. And it taught me that enforcing boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential. So, 3 years later, the apartment is quiet. The relationships in my life are healthy, and I finally feel in control of my space and time. It's a level of contentment I never thought I'd experience after that chaotic year. And every time I sip my coffee in the morning, watching Milo stretch in the sunlight, I'm reminded that setting boundaries isn't just about saying no, it's about saying yes to yourself. Final update. It's been just over 4 years since that day I told Ethan he couldn't use my car if he couldn't be quiet during the day. And looking back now, I can see how pivotal that moment was in shaping the life I have today. At the time, it felt like a confrontation, almost like I was being harsh. But it turned out to be the start of reclaiming my space, my energy, and my sense of self-worth. The apartment feels alive in a way it never did before. Quiet, yes, but alive. Daniel and I have settled into routines that support both of us. He knows when I need to rest, when I need uninterrupted time, and when I just need company, and he honors that without complaint. The care and consistency in his actions feel like a balm after the constant stress and disregard I experienced with Ethan. It's funny to think that something as small as respecting silence could feel revolutionary. But it does. Milo has grown even more attached to me. And in the best ways, he has little rituals. Waiting by the bedroom door when I wake up, curling on my lap whenever I sit with my tea, even following me to the kitchen to supervise meals. His presence is a comforting constant. He's loud sometimes with his purring and meows. But it's the kind of noise that brings warmth rather than stress. I laugh at the idea now, but for years, I didn't know the difference between chaos and comfort until I learned to set boundaries. Work has stabilized too. The unit I transferred to turned out to be a perfect fit. My shifts are manageable, my colleagues supportive, and I even started mentoring newer nurses. I never thought I'd enjoy work this much, mostly because it no longer bleeds into my personal space with exhaustion and resentment. I have energy again to dedicate to my life outside the hospital. Daniel and I have built a life together that's calm, nurturing, and honest. We travel when we can, cook together, and support each other's personal goals. He doesn't just respect my need for quiet, he encourages my independence. I can pursue hobbies, sleep, and even retreat into solitude without guilt. And the best part? I can do all of that without the nagging anxiety that someone else is constantly on the verge of pushing past my limits. As for Ethan, I haven't heard from him directly in years. Occasionally, Luke will pass a message along, asking about mundane things, and I respond politely but without engagement. It's not anger I feel anymore, just the clarity that we weren't compatible because he could not meet me halfway. I don't resent him, I just recognize the lesson he inadvertently taught me. Boundaries aren't optional if you want to sustain a relationship or even live in peace. I even started reflecting on friendships differently. I invest in people who respect my time, my energy, and my needs. I no longer excuse behavior that undermines my well-being. It's a subtle shift, but it affects every part of my life. I've realized that the people who matter will adjust to your needs because they want to, not because they have to. That's the kind of reciprocity I finally understand. A few nights ago, Daniel and I sat on the porch with Milo between us, sipping tea and listening to the rain, the soft patter against the windows, the dim glow of the streetlights. The way Milo twitched in his sleep, it all felt right. I didn't feel the tension I once carried, that nagging anxiety that someone might disrespect my space or ignore my boundaries. I felt grounded, I felt calm, I felt alive. That confrontation with Ethan, the one that felt so tense and uncomfortable, was actually the first moment I truly asserted my right to peace and respect. It was the moment I decided I would not shrink to accommodate someone else's laziness or thoughtlessness. Every step since then, every boundary I've set, every difficult conversation, every small act of self-respect traces back to that single decision. So here I am, 4 years later, in a life that's quieter, richer, and healthier. The apartment is mine. The relationships in my life are reciprocal. And I feel like I've finally reclaimed the energy I spent trying to manage someone else's irresponsibility. And I've learned that enforcing boundaries isn't just about saying no, it's about creating a space where love, respect, and peace can actually thrive. Sometimes I still think about that old chaos, about the loud arguments and exhausted mornings, and sometimes I smile because it's proof of how far I've come and how much stronger I am now. Peace isn't something you find by chance. It's something you fight for, protect, and nurture. And that's exactly what I've done.